My psycho grandfather tried to manipulate me, bribe me, and then force me into getting plastic surgery for my ear, as he was literally so obsessed with my ears and how they were completely misshaped that he went to crazy lengths just to force me into getting plastic surgery. He even went as far as to try and trick me into having surgery the same day just so I would get it done and be perfect in his eyes. And I'm honestly still blown away by the way he treated me. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 22-year-old male, and this is about my controlling grandfather who literally spent years trying to force me into plastic surgery. This is going to be a long one, so please buckle up. Now, for a bit of context, I was born with two slightly different shaped ears. One of them curls in a little, but it's not super noticeable unless you're staring at me from up close. It doesn't affect my life in any way, except that earbuds fall out more easily. Kids did tease me a little bit, but whatever. It was just how I looked. My grandfather, however, did not see it that way. To him, I wasn't perfect, and that was unacceptable. Looking back, I realized he was making comments about my ears since I was in preschool, but things really escalated when I turned 14 years old, which, for a bit of context, is the age that you can legally get plastic surgery in my former country. Practically every day, he would remind me of my hideous and atrocious ear. At the time, I lived with my mom, and he lived in the apartment below us. This meant that he had easy access to my life and never missed an opportunity to put me down. One day, after months of brainwashing, he took me to a fancy restaurant, just the two of us. Keep in mind, my mom and I were lower middle class, while he was more on the upper class side. I thought it was just a nice lunch, but when dessert arrived, he casually asked me, "So do you want to finally get plastic surgery and look normal?" And just like always, I told him no. I liked how I looked. I was unique. Now, what was his response, you might be wondering? He just silently stood up, paid the bill, yanked me by the arm, and dragged me to his car. He shoved me out in front of our apartment and drove off without another word. Now, he was supposed to watch me that evening since my mom had to work late, but instead he ignored me completely. I had no keys, so I sat outside for 6 hours until my mom came home. A few weeks later, he started talking to me again, acting like nothing had happened. One day, he even picked me up early from school and took me out to a restaurant. Strangely, for the first time in years, he didn't mention my ear. Not once. But instead, we just had fun. And over the next few weeks, he kept this up. We would go to movies, museums, my favorite restaurants. No insults, no guilt tripping. It honestly felt nice. But under the surface, there was a scheme going that honestly I didn't see coming. Because what my grandfather did next honestly blew my mind. Fast forward, and one day during a car ride home, he asked me, "What do you want the most and I'll buy it for you?" Well, asking an open-ended question like that to a 14-year-old left me ecstatic. So I asked him for a gaming PC. Well, without any hesitation, he drove me straight to the store and told me to pick out whatever I wanted, even setting a budget of $2,000. To me, that was an insane amount of money. I then just picked out my dream setup, practically shaking with excitement. Then, at the register, he turned to me and said, "All right, pay up." I blinked at him and I said, "Wait, what?" He then said to me, "Oh, you don't have the money? Well, I'll give it to you on one condition. You will fix your ear." His voice at this moment was deep and demanding, loud but not yelling, but still firm. I then started crying and I ran out of the store. And I literally ran the 5 kilometers back home. When I told my mom, she was livid. She stormed downstairs, pounded on his door until he opened up, and they argued for a long time. When she came back, she was in tears, but she told me I had done the right thing. The next day, my grandfather acted completely normal again. He picked me up from school, he was super friendly, and he told me that he had a surprise for me. On one hand, I knew he was up to something. On the other hand, he had taught me from a young age to use people for what they could offer. So I got in the car hoping for another fun day, but instead he drove me to a private health clinic. Once inside, he introduced me to his friend, a plastic surgeon. They talked for a while before the surgeon took my measurements, and then, just before signing the documents, the surgeon turned to me and asked, "Which one of you wants this surgery today?" At this point, I was frozen. My grandfather then immediately answered, "He does, he's just nervous." I then pointed at him and I held back my tears, and at this point, the doctor frowned. Well, I can't perform surgery if the patient doesn't want it. My grandfather then lied and said that he was my legal guardian, stating that it's because my parents were dead. He tried to fake documents to authorize the surgery, but thankfully the doctor refused. Now at that point, I completely broke down, terrified that something had happened to my mom. My grandfather sighed, drove me home without saying a word again, and handed me off to my mom, who had no idea where I'd been. And that moment was the breaking point for everything. We went low contact with him for a few years, or possibly he was punishing us by ignoring us as he tended to do that. Well, eventually, even I needed braces, and he offered to pay for them. We were tight on money, so my mom reluctantly agreed. He promised to cover half the cost, but in reality, he paid for half of my top braces and a quarter of the bottom ones. And not to mention, how he didn't think it was necessary to pay $20 every 2 weeks for a couple of years for tightening. He still, every couple of months or so, tried to bribe me to get the surgery, or to accept money as a loan that I I didn't need to try and pay him back, or any other way that he could think of to get control over me. Even now, years later, he still is trying to control me. I mean, I moved to a different country after college just to get away from him. I have no job yet, my savings are drained, and almost like he sensed it, he reached out last week. He said to me, "Do you want $10,000? All you have to do is get this quick, simple surgery and the money is yours." But you know what? I didn't even reply. After the incident at the clinic, my grandfather went on a smear campaign, telling our extended family that my mom, his own daughter, had somehow turned me against my loving and caring grandfather. And you know what? Most of them believed him. My mom and I were banned from family gatherings, holidays, and celebrations, and he even told us that we had no right to use our own last name anymore, with the only person who stayed on our side being my grandmother. I know this was a lot, and I'm so sorry for dumping it all on you guys, but I needed to tell somebody. The last two therapists I saw sided with him, so I feel like I have no one unbiased to talk to. And just to be clear, I will never get this surgery and I will never take his money ever in my life. Wow, your grandfather's a piece of garbage. Seriously, this guy's trying to be like, "Oh, you need to fix your ear. Here's all the money in the world. Get it done because I want it done." First of all, it's not that big of a deal, and secondly, this is not his body. He does not have a say over what you can and cannot do with it. So if you don't want to get that surgery, then congratulations, don't get it. I mean, this guy even went as far as taking you to a clinic and saying, "Okay, we're here to get surgery done." It's like, no, dude, you can't do that to somebody. So in my opinion, I think it's probably a good thing that you don't have to deal with your grandfather anymore, or at least you know exactly the kind of person he is. Because I know if I was in your shoes, I would cut him off completely. I would not only never talk to him again, but I would also fix my reputation amongst the family. I would tell them exactly what he did to me. I would spare no details, and I would literally be like, "Look, this is exactly what happened." Because what he did to you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable, and there's honestly no good excuse for any of that. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by making my girlfriend think that I was cheating on her, but in reality, I was planning a surprise engagement with her and her family, despite the fact that she thought I was cheating on her with her best friend. Here's what happened. Alright, so this actually happened over the weekend, and I'm still a bit shaken and relieved writing this. So my girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and I wanted to do something really special for her birthday coming up. I decided I would plan a surprise party and propose to her at the party in front of our friends and family. And yes, I know, this definitely is very ambitious. The past few weeks, I've been sneaking around organizing everything. I bought a ring, conspired with her best friend, and even had secret calls with her parents to get their blessing. I was so excited, and I was sure it would be an epic surprise. Well, the mess up began with all the secretive behavior this required. I am usually an open book, but suddenly I'm hiding my phone, texting people behind her back, and making up lame excuses to duck out of the house. I thought I was being slick to avoid spoiling the surprise, but in reality, I was acting really sketchy. Her best friend who's helping me plan messaged me something like, "Hey, I can't wait to see you to go over the final details." And this is while my girlfriend was borrowing my phone to play a song. I snatched the phone back so fast and pretended that it was a work message, but this was a mistake. At that point, I officially raised every suspicious red flag possible, and I could feel her side-eyeing me for the rest of the night. Over the next few days, I noticed my girlfriend getting quiet and anxious. I tried to play it cool, but I was often rushing off to take calls from the party venue or whispering to her friends about party preparation. She then started asking me strange questions. Stuff like, "Everything okay between us?" And I just nervously laughed it off, which only made me look guiltier. I was this close to the finish line, so I figured it would be fine once I pulled off the surprise. You know, if I could avoid looking like a cheating jerk for 2 more days. Well, last Friday, it all came crashing down. I came home and found my girlfriend in tears holding an iPad. Now, here's a pro tip for you. If you have Apple devices, they all get your iMessages. And basically, she had seen some of my message exchanges with her best friend about the plan and keeping it a secret. Now, one out of context line from me said, "Hey, I can't wait to finally do this. It's so hard to keep lying to my girlfriend." Now, for clarity, I meant lying to her about why I was busy, but my God, out of context, it looks so bad. She then confronted me sobbing, thinking I was having an affair with her best friend or something like that. She was shaking and my heart absolutely dropped into my stomach. I then started panicking, trying to explain it's not what you think. It took me a solid minute to get her to stop yelling and just listen. I was literally on my knees, not exactly how I planned this, trying to calm her down and tell her the truth. I said to her, "I swear I was lying because I'm trying to plan a surprise for you. Please just open that closet." She was still confused and sniffling and crying, and she opened the closet where I hid the birthday gift bag and the ring box inside. She turned back to me and I just blurted out everything. The party, the proposal, how her friend and parents were in on it, and that I'm an idiot. She then went from angry crying to shocked crying, and and finally started to happy cry once it all clicked in place. I ended up officially proposing to her right then and there on our living room floor, because why not at that point? Not the most grand romantic gesture I envisioned, but the ring made it on her finger. She said yes through a lot of tears and a half laugh at how absurd the whole situation was, and we just sat on the floor hugging each other, both of us just kind of trembling, her from the emotional roller coaster I put her on, and me from narrowly avoiding complete disaster. Later on, when things calmed down, she did kind of scold me by saying, "You dummy, I really thought you were cheating, you scared me," which is fair. I feel like a total jerk for putting her through that. We also had a laugh when she realized that her best friend's winky face emojis in our text messages were about the cake and decorations and not about secret hookups. In the end, we decided to still go through the birthday party that night and act like the proposal was a surprise in front of our friends. It was awkwardly hilarious because everyone but her thought that she was genuinely surprised when I got down on one knee. I mean, they had no idea she'd found out beforehand. And you know what? We haven't told that part of the story to our families yet. And for now, that little fiasco is just gonna be between me and the internet. Wow, talk about turning a possibly disastrous situation into a really good one. I completely understand where the girlfriend's coming from too, by the way. This looks really sketchy from her perspective. She sees you sneaking around, talking to her best friend via text messaging, and just all around acting shady and really secretive. And that, in my opinion, would set anybody's alarm bells off in their head. So good for you for fixing this possible disaster, because this really could have fallen apart in the worst way possible. My younger brother's girlfriend said something that made me incredibly uncomfortable. But now, even months later, this is still a problem in my family's lives as they constantly bring this up and criticize her for what she said. And as a result, I feel like I'm at a breaking point because I literally just want things to go back to the way they were. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, for a bit of background, my brother, who we will call John, is very different from me. And honestly, it's always been that way. I'm a nerdy guy who likes to play Dungeons and Dragons and someone who works from home coding websites. He's always been sporty and has one of those corporate office jobs where I swear half of his work is just playing golf and going to fancy lunches. We didn't always get along, but these days we are on pretty good terms. He started dating his girlfriend, who we will call Jane, a few years back during what was a pretty low point for me in my life. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship that had ended anything but amicably, was burning out of the career I went to college for, and in general was about 2 paychecks away from having to move in with my folks. The stress of it all was taking a toll on my body. I went from the lightly chubby that I'd been my entire life to just straight up fat. And shortly after the breakup, I had an anxiety attack so bad, it put me in the hospital. So basically, it was not a good time to get to know me. I was basically the picture of your messed up older brother. But you know what? I turned it around. I got the mental health assistance that I needed to diagnose and treat some long-standing issues. With that as a springboard, I started exercising more and eating better, finding cooking to be a good hobby that also led to me eating less takeout and processed food. I'm still no Adonis and I've still got a bit of a tummy, but I'm much stronger and I feel better. I was able to quit my job and find a new one in a field that I never considered, but that I found I loved enough that I'm going back to school to work on my PhD in the fall so that I can pursue it in a greater extent. And finally, I started dating again. Someone who, for the sake of the story, I'll call Flo, turned out to be a much better match for me than my ex. Which all brings us to the night where things went wrong. We have a family gathering at my parents' house, extended family and all, plus we had Jane and Flo over. And for this event, I'm making dinner, which is beef Wellington. Everyone is raving about my food. And for reference, I also did dinner this past Thanksgiving as well. They're also talking about my recent glow up, my new job, the program I got into, etc. I'm smiling politely and mostly just trying to do a bunch of dinner prep while they just won't get out of my way. Then Jane says to me, "Yeah, never thought I picked the wrong brother, but I'm starting to think that I might have." When she said that, you could literally hear a pin drop. I said nothing again and just awkwardly laughed at what I assumed to have been a bad joke. Jane's face then immediately changed to the look of someone who had just realized their mess up. John looked pissed off, and the two of them left the kitchen shortly afterwards. From what I could see, she seemed to be trying to apologize to him, while he looked really hurt. My relatives said nothing. Not immediately anyways. Flo just kind of winced, and later told me that it was really awkward having to stand there, but she didn't know what else to do that would have escalated things or put me on the spot. Well, that was over 2 months ago, and both John and Jane avoid me like the plague. Not even a text message ever since then. Whenever I meet up with my relatives, they badmouth her over it. And while I think Jane did mess up saying that, I really do think she was just trying to make a bad joke. Personally, I think they're overreacting. This aside, I think she's probably the first person he's ever dated who was a fit for him in terms of personality and lifestyle. The only person being normal about it is Flo, who thinks it was weird, but like me, just a dumb thing to say. She's not even jealous about the situation. She knows Jane isn't my type. So seriously, how do I clear clear the air with Jane and John and finally get people to stop bringing this up. I'm sick of hearing about it and I just want things to go back to how they were before. Right now, it just feels like a dark cloud over all our interactions. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Oh man, this is really annoying because I think you're exactly right. I think maybe she just made a bad joke and it flopped really bad. And now everybody's making a bigger deal out of this than there needs to be. Like that, in my opinion, is way worse than what she said because it really seems like they're just using that as an excuse to treat her like crap. And that is really not fair. Like seriously, that's not fair. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be taking the chance to look at these people and say, hey, you really need to stop talking like this because it's not good. I would even go to different family members in private and be like, listen, can we please stop this? This is weird and I don't like it and I don't agree with what you're doing. And then maybe that can like help mitigate things a little bit because I think at the end of the day, Jane just literally put her foot in her mouth. And now people are pretty much just throwing this way out of proportion. My dad keeps self-inviting himself on my trips across Europe and other places, where he literally shows up unannounced and basically interrupts all my plans right then and there. And I'm at a point where it keeps happening and it's honestly so annoying. And at this point, I don't know what to do. To start things off, I'm 30 years old with no siblings and a good relationship with my parents. I live a 2-hour flight away from my parents, and it's important to know that I love traveling. But ever since my early 20s, I'm always very uncomfortable telling my parents where I'm going next. I did a couple of trips with a friend in my early 20s, and my dad showed up in a surprising way. One time, it was in a European country, and the other one was in Thailand for a few days. And he continued the vacation by himself, and we went for dinner. My dad loves traveling, and my mom doesn't want to leave the country, so I guess from his perspective, when I go places, he has an opportunity to travel without being alone. I can't understand that, but I'm also very independent. And I'm 30, not over 60. The problem is that he always operates in the same way. I know every time I say I'm going somewhere, he is going to start checking how much a flight is for him. He won't ask if he can join, and instead he would appear as a surprise, self-inviting himself thinking that this is cool. For example, one time I said I was going with my boyfriend at the time to Paris, and he messaged me a few days later that he had everything planned to show up and wanted to know locations of my hotel. Now mind you, this was Paris in my 20s with my first official boyfriend, and he did not have the filter to understand that he was not invited, and at least that time I was able to avoid it since he needed some information. Recently, I went on a long weekend to Iceland by myself, and he made a comment that I should have told him about it earlier so that he could join me. The way I've been dealing with this is for a quick weekend trip in Europe sometimes, where I just don't tell anybody anything. For the rest, I tell them 1 or 2 days in advance only, so there's not that much time for him to plan out or think about it. I am so tired that every single time I get excited and have a trip planned, I spend weeks overthinking this, considering how and when I'm gonna have to avoid this happening. I am going to China for a week, and I haven't told him about this yet, but I keep getting weird dreams about this topic. He likes Asia and has been there a few times, so I see it as high risk, and I'm stressing out about it. I love him, but I really just don't like traveling with him. We have different ways and opinions, and at this point, I'm seriously not sure what to do. Yeah, I can understand why this would be really weird, because that just doesn't sound like a fun time. Seriously, he's interrupting your plans. He's literally getting involved in ways that you don't want him to get involved. And to that end, I don't blame you for being upset. But I do think that this is one of those situations where, like, yeah, you probably need to talk to him straight up and just straight up say that you don't want him showing up to any of your vacation plans. I would just tell him straight up that it's making you uncomfortable and you don't want to deal with that, because what you're describing sounds really annoying, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Am I the jerk for removing my cousin from my PC after they literally logged me out of a program that I needed to stay into, resulting in my cousin crying to his mother and me being painted as the bad guy? Here's what happened. Okay, so my uncle and his kids used to come over every single weekend, and they told their children it was okay to do whatever they wanted in my room, including taking my things. And one night, my cousin parked himself in front of my PC, all without asking if he could use it first. I see that he logs me out of a program, so I tell him to wait so I can log in again. He just responds that no, he didn't need to wait. Then for a full 15 minutes, I tell him to pause the YouTube video that he was watching, and I try to pause the video myself, but he just shoved my hands away from the mouse. Every time I told him to wait, he would also just yell at me. Eventually, I said, get your act together or leave, and that didn't even receive a response. So at that point, I just turned off the PC. Immediately, he turned on the crocodile tears and ran to his mom. I explained I only wanted him to pause so I could log into a program that he logged me out of. She responded and said, so you just had to do that while he was sitting there? I responded back by saying it's actually my stuff he's sitting at. She then said to me, okay, nice, well, we will remember that. For reference, before that, I wasn't even allowed to touch a Rubik's Cube when I was at their their place. In fact, I got told by my cousin that I'm not allowed to touch their stuff. So I angrily went to my room and I shut the door. I then overheard my grandma, who was living there with us at the time, saying that she can't say that I've been mean to the kids. My cousin's mom then says, well, I've been patient with him for a long time. And also, apparently my cousin has been telling his mom that I've been mean and said mean things, which I never did. They eventually discovered that he had been lying about me for a long time, but of course, I never got an apology. She then says to my grandma as she was at the door ready to leave, she said, I think this is the case. I believe he isn't confident with people his own age, so he has to compensate for that by attacking the kids. So am I the jerk in this situation for making my cousin cry, even though he was messing with my stuff? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, no, you are definitely not the jerk, and it's incredibly strange to me that your uncle and his wife would be like, oh yeah, use whatever you want. You could do anything in that room. Don't even worry about it. Even going as far as being like, oh yeah, you can steal from your cousin. Like at that point, I would lock down the entire room and change the password on the PC and everything. I would make it so they could never get into that ever again, because why should you let them? Like seriously, these people have completely violated your privacy and have taken it upon themselves to treat you like garbage. And that, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. My boyfriend secretly organizes a surprise wedding for the two of us, tricking me into coming to what I thought was a party, only to then find all of my family, friends, and acquaintances gather together to watch me marry my boyfriend right there on the spot. And after I turned him down in front of everyone, I'm being called the biggest jerk in the world. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Last week, I was invited to a supposedly fancy party by my longtime boyfriend. We had been dating for 5 years, and while we had discussed marriage before, there were no immediate plans for a wedding. Excited about the event, I dressed up in my best attire, and I arrived at the designated venue. As I entered the grand hall, I was completely taken aback to see all of our family, friends, and acquaintances gathered together, eagerly waiting. It turns out my boyfriend had orchestrated an elaborate surprise wedding for us without my knowledge. Everyone erupted into applause as I stood there, shocked and completely overwhelmed. I just felt a mix of emotions. While I love my boyfriend and had dreamed of our future together, the idea of getting married without any prior discussion or consent felt like a complete breach of trust. So I pulled my boyfriend aside, and I tried to express my concerns and reservations about the surprise wedding. I explained that I wanted a say in the planning process, to be part of the decision making, and to have the chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for such a significant milestone in our lives. However, my boyfriend dismissed my concerns, saying that he thought it would be a romantic gesture and that I would be thrilled. In that moment, I faced a difficult choice: go along with a surprise wedding, putting on a smile despite feeling unsettled, or stand up for my autonomy and voice my true feelings. I ultimately made the decision not to proceed with the surprise wedding, much to the disappointment and confusion of our guests. Now I find myself at odds with my boyfriend, as well as our families and even some of our friends, who believe that I overreacted and spoiled a beautiful moment. However, I firmly believe that a marriage should be a joint decision, with open communication and shared expectations. Everyone's excuse for this is that I have always talked about getting married to my boyfriend. And again, the problem isn't marrying him. The problem is not having any say in my wedding. My boyfriend thought I would appreciate it, because I always spoke about how stressful planning a wedding must be. Yes, I think it's stressful, but I still like planning one. After this whole ordeal, everyone asked if my boyfriend and I were ending things, in which I replied no. I emphasized towards them and my boyfriend I still wanted to marry him, and most of them feel like this makes me more of a jerk since I just wasted a perfectly fine wedding. Now, for some further context about me, I love surprises. It's a thing everyone has known about me that I enjoy. My boyfriend knowing that about me, and the fact that I wanted to marry him, and that I had said that wedding planning was stressful, thought that a surprise wedding would be perfect. A surprise engagement is bland, because it will always be a surprise but not a wedding. He threw this wedding for the surprise, but explained how in a couple of days, we could do a courthouse wedding to make it legal. This was his only way to surprise me. I love spontaneity, but legal marriage or not, I wanted a say in my wedding. I wanted to choose a perfect date. I wanted to choose my bridesmaids, to pick out my cake and all this other stuff. Again, due to these thoughts, everyone thinks I'm the jerk, because I could have just gone along with the party and do the real legal wedding later on. But again, I felt blindsided and so confused. So I left, and now I seriously don't know what to do. This is insane. Who in their right mind would think that surprising surprising someone with a wedding would be a good idea. Like seriously, that is unbelievably crazy to me. Look, I like surprise things just like anybody else. If someone had a surprise birthday party for me, or like a surprise gift that I always wanted, that would be awesome. Like that would be really cool. It wouldn't totally affect everything that I do with my life, but I would still really enjoy it. This, on the other hand, was not that. This was not a birthday party. This wasn't like a surprise vacation or something like that. This was him basically saying, hey, guess what? We're getting married. And sure, maybe he had good intentions, but seriously, who was helping him plan this? Did none of them seriously think this would be a bad idea and that this might flop as quickly as it's trying to happen? A wedding and getting married is not something that you're going to surprise on somebody and they're suddenly just going to be okay with it. That's a very big decision. So I'm personally on the side of the original poster. In no universe is it okay for your boyfriend to suddenly be like, oh, we're getting married right now. Like they weren't even engaged in the first place. Like this is nuts to me. A marriage is a partnership, but your boyfriend decided to change that and instead decided to try and make this an ambush. And that in and of itself is unbelievably disrespectful. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for not pushing my family to include my fiance in the Christmas card photos for this year? Here's what happened. So I'm a 37-year-old male and I am engaged to my 31-year-old female fiance, and we're planning on getting married at the end of this year. My family takes a Christmas card photo every year, usually around big events like graduations or parties when everyone is together, which honestly isn't super often. Years ago, my mom instituted a not until you're married policy to including significant others in photos, and applied that rule to my brother when he was dating and engaged to his now wife. My fiance has had significant issues with this. Last year when the family took photos shortly after she and I were engaged, she directed many snide comments to me about how excluded she feels. This year she flatly refused to drive with me to a family graduation, saying how hurt and excluded she felt by this policy since we are getting married this year and the card is coming out the year that we're getting married. I've tried to explain that this isn't our card. This isn't our right to tell others who can or cannot be on the card, and we could always have our own card to start our own tradition. She's made several comments around how surprised she is that I haven't stood up to her to my mother, even telling me that she's discussed the issue with others, and they are also surprised that I wouldn't take a stand with my mother on this. She also made a point multiple times of saying, good, less time to spend on photos with them at the wedding, implying a tit-for-tat response to this policy. So honestly, am I the jerk for not pushing my family to include my fiance in the Christmas card photos this year? Your fiance is being unreasonable. She really doesn't understand that there might be some kind of tradition that just doesn't include her. Like seriously, she needs to get over herself. She is being very selfish and being very unfair when it comes to what's happening on this stupid Christmas card. And it's just that. It's just a Christmas card. It is not the end-all be-all of opportunities in this family. And the best part about it is that now that you're getting married, you can then get on the Christmas card next year. Like seriously, what is the problem here? She's being petty for literally no reason, and it seems like she's angry that this is all not about her. And that's not fair for anyone in the slightest. Literally, this tradition has been going on for years, and I personally think your mom is very smart for having that policy, because your fiance could very well become your ex-fiance like overnight. It isn't the first time that's happened, and I personally would not want to try to explain to other family members as to why that is no longer the case. Like that literally sounds like a mess, and I don't blame her for saying no. You need to be married if you want to get in the picture. And also, it's not like your mom made this rule new just for your fiance. It literally is something that's happened for every single sibling and every single person in that family. Like this rule was enacted before she was even a part of this family. So no, you're not the jerk. Your fiance's being weird, and honestly, she just needs to get over herself. I attempted to set a boundary with my sister, informing her that I don't want her coming along with me on a cross-country trip when I move out this fall. And now, as a result, I'm being guilt-tripped by my entire family, all because I'm trying to maintain my own personal peace by excluding my sister and riding along with me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 27-year-old female with 4 siblings, and I'm the oldest. I have recently moved back home for the summer during a career transition, and my new position begins in the fall. During my time back home, I'm having trouble forgiving my family and continuing a relationship when in the past it has really hurt me, specifically my sister who's 26 years old, and this deals specifically with a move. I am moving across the country in the fall and would like some help with the move. I asked my mom to help because she is supportive, she's helpful, and wasn't physically available growing up because of work, so I recognize this effort delivered would be healing for the both of us. The last time I moved across the country, which was about 2.5 years ago, I asked my father and my sister to help out, and honestly, it was terrible. My father didn't help at all, and instead used it as time for vacation, and my sister lashed out at me the entire trip. At one point, in her anger, she almost got us into a car accident. When she's upset, she'll drive recklessly with us in the car. One winter, to punish me, she made me sit in the back with the windows open and refused to roll them up so I would freeze. That's how bad she can get. I understand that she was sad about me moving across the country, and the way she expressed it was through anger. I mean, it is tough to process a family member transitioning into a new phase of life that doesn't include you, but it wasn't okay. I essentially was taking care of two people while single-handedly managing my move across the country. It was exhausting and traumatic. I was processing a cross-country move to a place I knew no one, and some support would have been nice. So this time around, I just want my mom to come along. In my planning for this move, my sister asked why she can't come to help me move, so I decided to just be honest with her. I said to her that the last time you came along, it wasn't helpful, and it made a hard process even harder. And in my frustration, I said, "You're not helpful." Now, I shouldn't have said that last part. It was not nice, and it came from resentment. My sister has made significant strides in her self-improvement since the first time I moved, but I am scared to include her in this life change, especially since 6 months ago, she threw something at me at Christmas, which is another story in and of itself. Progress is shown in behavior, not her telling me that she's changed all the time. I have, of course, told her she's welcome to visit once I get all moved in, but moving is the boundary I'm setting. I think the decision I've made is the right one, but my parents and my sisters make me feel terrible about it. I apologize to my sister about the comment, but she has never apologized for how she behaved when I first moved. Instead, her response to why I did not ask her to come along was to say to me, "Sorry that I'm toxic and terrible then." Now, if she had simply stated, "I know I behaved out of line last time, I'm sorry, but this time I'm making strides to do better, and I would like to come along to show you that," I would have been okay with including her, but her response showed me that there is still room for improvement. My parents say that I should forget about it because I think too hard about how people treat me. I mean, am I being too harsh with my sister? Am I being vindictive, or am I setting a boundary? What should I do? Honestly, it doesn't sound like you're being vindictive at all. Like, your sister very clearly has some toxic traits about her, and it sounds like you don't want to deal with that on a cross-country move. And that, in my opinion, is completely reasonable. I mean, what, 6 months ago she threw something at you at Christmas? That kind of behavior is super inappropriate. And from the sounds of it, it really looks like it's because she's being toxic and she's being very disrespectful to you and everybody else around her. So I don't think that's your fault at all. Sure, your sister has made a lot of strides to be better and to do better in general, but it doesn't sound like she's completely there. So you saying, "No, I don't want you to come along on this cross-country trip," is not completely unreasonable. That's going to be a long trip. Can you imagine dealing with her trying to throw things around after like hour 4? Not to mention the incident where she kept all the windows down and forced you to deal with all this cold weather as the wind blows in. Like, that's just crazy. So personally, if she wants to help out, she can help things get packed up, and she can at least be supportive in that way. But in my opinion, it seems like you're making the right decision by being honest with her and saying, "You know what, I don't want you coming along," because this trip is already hard enough, and the last thing you need is your sister unintentionally making that trip even harder. I'm convinced that my upstairs neighbor is stealing my Amazon packages, and today, as I was waiting outside for one to be delivered, I screamed at him in a fit of rage, and now I feel horribly embarrassed, and I don't know if I was the jerk in that situation. Here's what happened. So about 6 months ago, we moved into a new apartment. It's a house with 3 apartments inside of it, 2 on one floor and 1 in the basement. We reside in the basement apartment, and there is a guy in the middle, but besides that, no one else is in the house. We ordered some curtains and some stuff from Amazon and had it shipped to the house. So the day of the delivery came, and I ran up to the porch and I couldn't find the packages. I knocked on the door and the guy answered. I explained who I was, and before I got another word out, he said to me, "I didn't steal no package." Now at that point, I didn't even say anything about a package. So I just nodded and I asked if he saw anything or if his camera did. He shook his head and said, "That camera ain't working, just for show." So I left and chalked it up to a mistake or something. We got our money back from Amazon and ordered again, and had it shipped to my mom's house instead. Now we decided to do that until my girlfriend's daughter accidentally had a package sent to the house. I watched the tracking like a hawk, and as I saw that it was delivered, I broke my neck to get to the porch. But still, no package was there. I was frustrated. I racked away and kicked one of the house trash cans. I had a guess, and I looked into the trash asked for the package. Maybe the delivery driver put it in the trash. While I was looking, the guy came out and said to me, "Oh, you looking for another package?" I closed the lid and he literally said to me, "I didn't take this one either." At that point, I just about lost it. I went back to the apartment and I almost cried from anger. The next day, the town's Facebook page was going crazy. Someone had stolen an autistic kid's bike from in one of the local diners. The kid is well known around town, so everybody and every business checked their cameras and caught the jerk in the act. And guess what? It was the guy who lives above me, the one who didn't steal my packages. So that brings me to yesterday, when I accidentally shipped something to the house. I didn't know that PayPal changes the shipping address. I went up there and I waited for the package. He comes out and stares at me and says, "What are you doing?" I say to him, "I'm waiting for a package, since I can't trust anyone on this street." "Well, I didn't steal your packages." "Yeah, just like you didn't steal a bike," I muttered to myself. He threw a fit and told me to get off of his porch. At that point, I lost it. All the anger boiled up and came out. I called him a useless piece of garbage, that he was the worst human being in town. I was so angry, all my words came out in loud, shrill screams. But he just said that he didn't steal nothing over and over again. Then I went back to the basement feeling embarrassed. So honestly, am I the jerk for screaming at this guy? Your neighbor sounds like a nightmare. Can you imagine trying to get something shipped to your address, only to then have this dirtbag come down and scoop it up? Like, that neighbor sounds incredibly sketchy. And while you don't have definitive, obvious evidence that this guy stole your packages, I think it can definitely be inferred that he probably did it. I mean, this guy blatantly stole some kid's bicycle. Who's to say that he wouldn't steal your Amazon packages before they get to your house? I don't know, it just seems super obvious, but it's one of those where you're like, I don't have proof. So no, I don't blame you for being upset. In my opinion, I absolutely think this guy was stealing your packages, and he was probably more annoyed that you were out there before he could get there to try and steal it again. Also, if I was in your shoes, I would be talking to the landlord. I would say to them, "Hey, this is like the third time this has happened, and I'm pretty sure it's this guy." And then maybe request to have some kind of like camera system set up. I don't know, something to try and mitigate this guy stealing your stuff. You can also conveniently inform the landlord that this guy straight up stole somebody's bike. But either way, this guy is super sketchy, and his attitude really does suck, so I don't blame you for getting angry at this guy in the slightest. My friend sent me a screenshot of an active and verified Tinder profile of my boyfriend, and now I seriously don't know what to do. So a friend of mine sent some screenshots of a Tinder profile that had an active badge, meaning the profile was online in the past 2 hours, and it was verified as well. The profile had a bunch of photos of my boyfriend, and when I asked him about that, he swore it's a fake profile, saying it's not the first time to find a fake profile with his pictures on it. And he also said he deleted his Tinder account a long time ago. I found out that the profile was last online 3 kilometers away from his house, which is quite far even for an inaccurate GPS. Anyways, I found all of this weird because verified profiles require selfies with specific gestures. The profile also had a lot of his real hobbies and personality traits, as well as his college courses, his profession, and a lot of other intimate details. If the profile is really a fake one, it was created by someone who definitely knows him. Now, things got a little worse. I asked him to download Tinder and log in with his account. To me, he would download it and show that he doesn't have an account, or if he did, it was inactive, and that the other one was indeed fake. However, he denied me this, saying that relationships are based on trust, and that I had to trust him, especially because it's not the first time that I suspected him, as well as getting proven wrong, and he was getting tired of having to prove things to me. Now I don't know what to do. I love him and I want to trust him, but the profiles are very convincing. There are so many photos, a perfect description of him and his hobbies, the account is verified, etc. He could have just showed me the account and shut me up entirely, but instead he came at me with this talk about trust. The only thing he did was showing me that all the photos that the profile had were all available on his Instagram at some point, meaning that someone could have used them at some point. Another behavior that I found weird was that he wasn't even bothered about the verified fake profile using his photos. I mean, he's not even gonna get upset about this. I offered him to help find the fake profile, and he didn't show any interest at all. What would you do in this situation? Should I ignore this and just blindly trust him? Or is something more happening? What should I do? The original poster actually has an update to this story. They further clarified that the profile existed for at least 6 months, which is a very hard achievement for a fake profile. And they say that they know this because a friend already chatted with that profile in January. And also, apparently right after they left their boyfriend's house, the profile suddenly got deleted, and the original poster was amazed by this. I mean, what a coincidence after all. A 6-month-old fake profile got deleted the exact same day they confronted their boyfriend about it. The original poster then goes on to say the following: "Well, I broke up with him, as this was the only option, no matter how I tried to find a way to defend and forgive him. It hurts so much, because I helped him with so many things. We spent all this time together, and if he was trustworthy, this relationship would have gone so far. If he was the person I thought he was, I would have married him. Now I am just alone. I have always been a lonely person with few friends, and he was by far my best friend." Now, one of the reasons his trust talk may not be entirely BS is because I already suspected him 2 or 3 times in the previous months, and in one of them, I demanded to read his Instagram DMs, but he refused after I started reading some of the messages. In another one, I shamefully created a fake profile just to test him, so he has been asking for trust for quite a while. On the one hand, it's clear to me that my past suspicions and my paranoia may not have been so crazy and paranoid like I've been accused of. Yes, I have trust issues, and I'm going to see a therapist, but at the same time, I blindly loved him, and even so, I was never able to fully trust him, no matter how hard I tried. I never had even 20% of this difficulty on trusting any of my ex-boyfriends. What makes me so mad is that he didn't admit that the profile was his. He truly thinks that I'm 100% a fool. At this point, I don't know if he was using me for some kind of financial advantage, or if he just wanted to be with me to show off to his friends. All the while, he's going around behind my back with other people. I will honestly never know. The only possibility of it being fake is if the fake is owned by one of his friends, and his friend deleted the profile right after my friend messaged the profile. This is all so frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. I mean, honestly, it kind of seems like this was his profile. That is such a crazy coincidence, to be completely honest. You confront your boyfriend on that day, and then once you leave, the profile gets deleted. That's either crazy circumstances, or he really was hiding this from you and he didn't want you to know about it. It's weird to me, like if this guy really cared about you, he could have easily just logged into Tinder and shown you and been like, "Look, it's not me. I don't have this profile. I would never do that to you," or something along those lines. That doesn't seem like an unreasonable thing to at least show, hey, I'm being faithful here. I haven't done anything nefarious and I wouldn't do that. But he straight up refused to do that. I know if I was the original poster's boyfriend in this situation, I would make the simple step of just logging into Tinder just to show my partner that no, it's not me. But his unwillingness to do that is really suspicious to me. So truly, I'm sorry that you had to deal with this. This doesn't sound like a fun situation to be stuck in, and it doesn't help that your now ex-boyfriend was incredibly resistant to trying to find some kind of solution to this. My entitled sister-in-law steals money from me and my family, as well as creates credit cards in my name that she spends without my knowledge. But eventually the law catches up to her, forcing her to do some jail time, as well as paying me back thousands of dollars in restitution. Here's what happened. So I have 3 nieces and a nephew I was quite close to. They frequently spent weekends and every special occasion with us in our home. As of writing this right now, I have not seen them for nearly a year. My sister-in-law and I were both employed as caregivers to elderly homebound individuals. Because of our job experience, we were taking turns assisting our grandfather-in-law with dementia. In March, he received a credit card statement with over $21,000 in transactions. When confronted with the bill, my sister-in-law admitted that she had taken and used the credit card. On my next visit to assist him, I drove him to the sheriff's office to file criminal charges despite my sister-in-law's promises to pay off the debt with the bank. Those charges are still pending. My sister-in-law was fired and blacklisted from working with elderly people and has cried that this should be punishment enough. Once charges were filed, the children were no longer allowed to spend any time with me, my husband, or our sons. She's run through several jobs since then and was recently fired from another job for stealing. Just before Halloween, I switched jobs and I noticed that my card was missing. I then received a new credit card in the mail that I had not applied for. My sister-in-law currently resides at my previous address as we gave her the house where she currently lives. I often receive credit card offers in the mail and they've been sent to that address on numerous occasions. I was immediately suspicious, but with nothing to go on, I just let it go. On November 21st though, I received a credit alert that I had opened a PayPal credit account and paid another PayPal user $250. So I contacted the creditor as well as local law enforcement. My sister-in-law is adamant she's had nothing to do with it. I'm still waiting on paperwork from the bank to verify her contact information on the application. She she has since dug in her heels and announced to the world that the children are not allowed to spend any time with us for Christmas unless all charges against her are dropped. This will be the very first Christmas my youngest son hasn't spent with his cousins. And you know what? He's heartbroken. But I'm just angry. I don't understand how she musters the audacity. Now, I froze my card after I received the first credit card. I'm not 100% sure how the transaction still went through, but my thought is she had all the necessary information and could have easily unfrozen it herself. It's taken so long to nail down these charges because attorneys are nitpicking over charges she spent versus which ones were actually legitimate. Aside from assortment of bills, here's just some of the purchases that she made. She spent $800 on tickets to a Backstreet Boys concert. She also Venmo'd $700 to her BFF while also spending $1,600 on a photo shoot, $600 at Victoria's Secret, $450 in deliveries from her favorite local Mexican restaurant, $400 more on an ATV excursion in Mexico on a cruise with her husband, and then $650 from a website that sells designer scrubs. Nothing was purchased for her kids at all. Well, as an update, at the court hearing this past week, my sister-in-law was sentenced to 20 days in jail, and as a result, she must now pay $8,000 in restitution. What an awful situation. First off, I want to say that it really sounds like your sister-in-law is a horrible person. Not only is she stealing from you and obviously stealing from everybody else around her, but she also tried to use her kids as like bartering chips. She thought that her saying to the world, oh, my kids are never coming for Christmas. We're never showing up ever again and you can't see them, all while also demanding that you drop all charges against her, shows exactly the kind of person she is. She not only knew that she was in the wrong, but she was also trying to punish everybody else around her for trying to make sure she was held accountable for her actions. Also, that's crazy to me that someone can open up a credit card under your name with just the bare bones amount of information at someone's fingertips. That goes to show you that you really need to be careful in the world. There's always someone out there that's trying to make sure your financial future is ruined. And that's exactly what this sister-in-law was doing. And at that point, if I was in this situation, the fact that she's trying to be like, oh, you can't be around my kids anymore unless you drop the fact that I'm a criminal, I would be like, okay, I just won't see your kids ever again. Like, seriously, she thinks that's gonna solve any of these problems? What is gonna solve these problems is her doing jail time as well as paying me back all the money that she stole. So thankfully, that's exactly what happened. This sister-in-law got exactly what she deserved because based on her history, she absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My husband is clearly unhappy with their current job, but after I tried to push him to find something else so that he would get paid more, he is now being very resistant and refusing to take any steps forward to further his career. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. My husband is 30 years old and has a master's degree in engineering and currently is working as a manager at a very large company. He was promoted to manager in November, but they gave him the lower tier manager position because he was 4 months short of the work requirement for the second tier. When he was promoted, the director told him that it would be a quick promotion to the second tier, so we were expecting him to be promoted in April. Well, April passed. He has brought up his promotion several times to the director. His company is known for holding people below their deserved tier and sometimes doing this for years, and instead spending a ton of money on new hires. He has told me probably 100 times about how much it upsets him and how he is never going to allow that to happen to himself. It's also pretty well known in this industry that you have to move around just to get paid. I told him if August hits without a promotion, he's going to have to start looking for a new job. He's a young engineer with a master's degree and 10 years of experience, and he is never going to be more valuable as a new hire than he is right now. Frankly, his sector of engineering underpays for engineers. The problem is, the job he has right now is great. The work environment is chill, he has a lot of mentors on his team that are very seasoned engineers, and he likes what his team does and wants it to succeed, but he doesn't want to start over. He straight up asked me, well, how much does money matter? And I rebutted by saying, well, why don't you answer that question? At which point he mumbled and grumbled and laughed a little bit because money has always mattered more to him than me and he knows it. I feel like I'm just trying to prevent him from doing something he regrets and being complacent, but maybe I'm wrong. What should I do? Honestly, in this situation, it is a little bit tricky. I think the way you went about it is a little bit too rough in my opinion. Like, it really sounds like the original poster is trying to dictate this guy's career, and I don't think that's appropriate in the slightest. He really does sound happy there besides the pay itself. itself, which also makes me think that maybe this guy is complaining just a little bit too much. Like, I can totally see that the original poster might feel backed into a wall. Like, they see their partner and they're just like, wow, they really don't like their job. Okay, it's time for a change or something needs to happen. So you try to push them and say, okay, we need to move forward and get you something better overall. But clearly your partner just doesn't see it that way. He is very happy about the office culture and the fact that there's a lot of really chill people working there, which honestly, that is a huge benefit of a workplace. Working with people who are really cool and just really relaxed overall makes a huge difference in the work environment. So I don't blame him for saying, you know what, let's just stick where we're at. But if he really does feel that way, then maybe he should stop complaining all the time to the original poster, because it really is leading her to believe that, wow, my husband's just completely miserable. Let's try to solve this problem together. So I think overall, you guys need to do just that. This needs to be a team effort, and it doesn't need to be you trying to tell him what to do, as well as him complaining at the drop of a hat over stuff that apparently he's really happy about. Because from the sounds of it, it really does seem like some wires are getting crossed. And hopefully some kind of mutual agreement can come between the two of them, because otherwise this argument and conversation is just gonna keep coming up over and over again. My dad is constantly comparing me to my older sisters, and after dealing with this for several years, I finally blew up at him and said some things that I honestly really regret. And at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So I'm an 18-year-old female, and I am the youngest child of 5 girls. My mom passed away when I was 4 years old, and my dad has raised us alone ever since. I don't really have an issue with my dad's parenting, but it's mostly with how my sisters treat me. I'm the baby of the family. I'm always treated like an infant who can't do things. They're fiercely overprotective to the point where I can't do anything normal teenagers do. For example, one time I wasn't even allowed to go to a birthday party when I was 15, all because boys would be there, and it was my sisters who decided that. I've always had to share my own things, and even now I'm so bad at standing up for myself. I was always compared to my perfect sisters, and even now, my family still tells me about what they were doing at my age and how what they were doing was so amazing. It really annoys me the older I get. I can't be my own person. I love them, but our relationship has been rocky ever since I moved out for college. I'm on my own for the first time and I'm loving it. I got a boyfriend who I adore and I'm really finding myself. I'm home for summer now, and a couple of days ago, I got into a big fight with my dad. He found out about my boyfriend and told me I needed to break up with him. He's never even met the guy. He told me I'm too young to date and compared me to my sisters, who I know for a fact hooked up with so many boys in college. Now, I'm not a person who usually gets angry. I was raised to always respect my elders, and it's a massive sin in my culture to talk back. But I was mad. I said that I'm an adult now, and I can make my own choices, whether they're good or bad. He admitted that it was my oldest sister who brought this to his attention, and that made me even madder. I screamed a little bit at him just to get my point across. I told him that I hate being the youngest, and I hate having so many sisters, and that he should have been more careful in having kids. He was incredibly upset with me and kicked me out for the night. I ranted to my boyfriend about all of this, and he told me my dad was being ridiculous. But I can't help but feel like maybe I should have kept my mouth shut. 2 of my sisters reached out and told me I need to apologize and even bring a gift. I'm so sick of being the youngest daughter, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First off, I don't think it's a bad idea to apologize. Obviously, this was a heat of the moment kind of thing, and you may have said some things that you obviously regret later on. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing to feel upset that you're always controlled by your older sisters and your dad, but also the way this all went down was just nasty all around. Like, in some ways, I really do agree with the original poster. I don't think there's anything wrong with you having a boyfriend at 18 years old. You put it best, you are an adult now, and you should be able to make those decisions for yourself. Like, you're in college now and you're moving on with your life, and that is absolutely okay. Like, in my opinion, that's completely normal. But I think you came at your dad a little bit too hard in this instance, and I think at least when it comes to that, you should probably apologize and try and make amends. Being angry and hostile towards your dad in this situation, even though you've dealt with this for so long, I personally think won't be super effective in trying to get your point across. But that also doesn't excuse his behavior of constantly comparing you to your sisters. Like, obviously that's super obnoxious. I can only imagine growing up and listening to that day after day for years. That's not fair, and that can absolutely be communicated in a way where he understands where you're coming from. You can explain to him that you don't want to be treated like that, and you want to be compared to the person you are today, and not compared to your sisters, who probably don't even live at home anymore. So hopefully this all works out for you. It sounds like your dad did the best he he could in the situation that was placed in front of him, but that also doesn't excuse the fact that he really has not treated you like your own person. And hopefully with some communication, a mutual understanding can come together between the two of you. Am I the jerk for asking my boyfriend to scuba dive again after he almost had a panic attack? Here's what happened. So to start things out, my boyfriend is a bit angry with me at the moment, and it's got me wondering if I was in the wrong. My boyfriend and I booked ourselves to do a scuba course in Tanzania. We started it a few days ago, and it involves going through scuba theory where we were tested and we passed, and the instructors brought us to the beach to give it a go. Now, I really enjoyed it, but my boyfriend definitely didn't. We're both strong swimmers, which is why we decided to try it out. However, once my boyfriend got under the water, he started to panic. He immediately resurfaced and said he felt like a panic attack was coming on and he wanted to leave. He wanted to get out of the gear and sit on the beach to wait for us, but I gently persuaded him to give it another go because I know he would regret it later if he didn't at least try, and he would not like all the money that he would have wasted on this. He did give it another go, but struggled and decided to sit on the beach, so the rest of us went back out and we had a great time. I joined him afterwards and explained how much fun it was and that we saw some fish while we were doing it. He was really happy for me, so I asked him again if he wants to give it another go, and he just completely shut me down. He said that me asking him before made him feel like he couldn't say no, and like he didn't give it a proper go. I argue that he didn't. He didn't even make it out into deeper water to put the things that we learned to use. He maintains that he didn't want to have a panic attack in the deeper water and put us in danger, and that it's not my place to say whether he tried properly or not because he thinks that he did. Was I a jerk in this situation? I talked to him out of a good place because he looked so excited about the fish. I also don't think me asking him to try again was a big deal because he's done this with other similar adventure activities that we've tried to do and always laments that he regrets not fully committing to the activity. What should I do? Honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this. For the boyfriend side of things, they were clearly about to have a panic attack. Like they were freaking out, they were not doing good in this scuba gear, and they wanted to get out and go sit on the beach. And that in and of itself is probably already really embarrassing. I can imagine that this was probably really expensive. So he was already acutely aware that yeah, I wasted money on this and I really did not enjoy it. I also think his justification for backing out is completely valid. He felt a panic attack coming along and he wanted to leave and get out of the situation. He didn't want to have a panic attack in deeper waters and really put things in danger. That, in my opinion, is completely appropriate, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that type of response and knowing your body. So this situation was really not for him, and he probably really regretted it sitting on the beach waiting for his girlfriend. But on the other side of it, I think to a certain extent, his girlfriend really was trying to be supportive. She was there in the moment in the shallow water. He was feeling this panic attack coming on, and she was trying to be encouraging. It really did seem like she wanted him to try it one more time before quitting. And that in and of itself, honestly, was not that big of a deal. I think she really was coming from a good place in that first attempt, and she was just encouraging him to try it one more time, which in my opinion is completely reasonable. But where this became a little bit inappropriate is when she brought this up again on the beach after she's like, wow, I had such a great time. Like it almost seemed like she was completely ignoring the fact that he almost had a panic attack and was instead almost rubbing salt in the wound of the fact that he didn't participate in this activity. Like, I don't know about you, but having a panic attack while scuba diving is probably one of the worst places to have a panic attack. I'm pretty sure you can drown if that happens. So I personally think the boyfriend is smart for backing out and saying, you know what, this is not for me. And it's not the initial first time where you're like, wait, try it one more time. It's the fact that this person is trying to say, oh, you didn't try hard enough. Like, what are you talking about? That is really immature and that's really inappropriate. I totally understand that you want him to not regret later on that he didn't try the activity, but he did try it, twice in fact, and he realized he didn't want to do it, and you really should not have come back at him and tried to almost rub it in his face that you had a great time and that he instead definitely missed out. An entitled Karen freaks out on me, screaming because we don't have any more soap for her hotel room. And it was honestly so overwhelming dealing with this, and I seriously don't know what to do. So for context, I work at a hotel, and for the sake of my job, I can't say which one. Specifically, I work overnight auditing. This time around though, I was scheduled for an afternoon shift, a rare occurrence but something still manageable. The previous shift worker told me we ran out of soap, which is, yes, unfortunate, but it does happen. So anyways, I'm checking guests in on a Saturday and it's not too many. Everything is going smoothly. After I check some in, I go into the back office and I do some rudimentary paperwork. And that's right about when this lady starts ringing the bell aggressively. aggressively. When I get there, she immediately starts asking if I have any extra bars of soap, to which I say, unfortunately, I don't think we do. I'm so sorry. She was annoyed and asked, well, you guys don't seem to be fully booked, so can you take some from unused rooms? That doesn't sound that bad of an idea, even if she was rude about it. So I tell her I'll see what I can do. So I give my maintenance guy a call, and I ask him if he can grab a few bars of soap from any of the extra rooms, but he tells me that there weren't any left, much to this lady's dismay. This entitled Karen then says to me, I don't want to have to go out and buy soap from the store. As an employee of this hotel, this is unacceptable. You should have some in stock at all times. This lady was absolutely fuming and raising her voice at me. I was taken back by her sudden outburst, and I didn't know what to say at first. She continued to berate me. It isn't your fault, but I imagine there are several other guests without soap as well. That is honestly unsanitary and maybe even grounds for a lawsuit. This is unacceptable. Now, I'm someone who's not very good with other people, let alone someone screaming at me. It is personally one of my triggers, so I wasn't taking it well and I was trying my best to stay composed, but it was becoming more difficult. I say to her, I'm sorry ma'am, but I don't know what to say. I want to speak to your manager or whoever manages your stock. When do they come in? Yep, there it was, asking for the manager. Way to go, lady. You definitely earned your name as Karen. So I tried to call both of them, even my district manager, asking what I should do, but they didn't answer. And maybe this is because it was 8 o'clock at night. I tried to tell her that the manager nor my coworker responsible for hotel stock would be coming in today, and they won't be in until Tuesday. They weren't currently reachable, and I'm so sorry. But this entitled Karen was not having it. She demanded a discount on top of her already discounted room, which was charged at a hotel employee rate. I told her I would talk to my district manager about it, as I wasn't able to provide that. Then she refused to pay altogether until she spoke with someone and to unsign her name from the room. Unfortunately, I was unable to do that because what do I know? I'm just the night auditing guy. I couldn't undo her check-in as it would incur a no-show charge, which would probably just upset her even more. I had no idea what to do, so I told her I would do everything in my power. After trying to convince her everything was all right, she finally went back to her room. After that whole ordeal, I went into the back and just kind of broke down. Luckily, no one was there to witness it, but man, that was stressful. I did end up leaving a note for my manager through text messaging and leaving a note for the morning shift person. That was all I could have done. Oh, and to top it all off, I walked into work tonight and I see a note saying that she called and apparently demanded the room be free for her so-called inconvenience. I personally don't think she deserved a free room, especially since she thinks that she can get away with it. But unfortunately, I think my manager will cave. But I guess we'll see what happens in the morning. Honestly, what an awful situation to be stuck in. There's nothing worse than just being the guy who's filling in for the night and then to have some entitled Karen run up and start screaming at you, as if anything that's going wrong is your fault in the slightest. Like you didn't cause the soap to run out in the hotel. It's not like you personally started throwing bars away. You're just trying to do your job and get through the shift as quick as possible. I mean, that lady was seriously being obnoxious. There's no reason to talk to staff like that. You didn't do anything wrong. But unfortunately, it sounds like her screaming and crying really did pay off in the end, because the original poster provided an update. Apparently, she ended up getting the room for free yesterday, but still continued to argue with pretty much everybody at the hotel. And honestly, is anybody really surprised about this? I mean, this entitled Karen is acting like soap isn't readily available at like the dollar store or something like that, and you can even buy them for like super cheap. Also, with that in mind, this is not the original poster's fault. Like, the manager very easily could have done just that as well. They could have gone to the store, bought a bunch of soap, and given it to each room. They could have then provided receipts and gotten reimbursed for it. Like, if anything, this just sounds like the original poster was caught in the crossfire of several different people's mistakes. So personally, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, but at the end of the day, everybody sucks here, and you just happen to be the person caught in the middle dealing with everybody else's mess ups. An entitled Karen freaks out after she doesn't get the discount she thinks she's entitled to, freaking out and gaslighting us in the process, and being an absolute all-around nuisance to everybody in the restaurant. Things got so bad that she eventually blocked the entrance to the restaurant with how much of a scene she was causing. Here's what happened. So I work as a host for a restaurant, and yesterday was Father's Day, so it was packed. I worked pretty much the entire day, woke up at 10 in the morning, and clocked in at 12 p.m. I sat this family down at around 3 o'clock p.m., and I didn't think much of it. But about half an hour later, the complaints were rolling in. The customers were trying to make substitutions with the combo meals, and that wasn't allowed except for certain items. items. And it wasn't for some small combo either. It was worth upwards of $100. And this entitled Karen kept trying to squeeze in expensive items to substitute the less expensive ones. When the restaurant emptied out a bit, the manager stopped by at the front desk for a break and a chat. She also started to complain about these customers. They were doing a lot of things that were rubbing us the wrong way. For starters, they pretended like they didn't get a part of their combo when the busboy, chefs, and waitresses all could confirm that it was made and that it was sent to their table. They also started holding the check and the tip as some kind of ransom, demanding that their order be fixed. And they returned about $40 worth of food after just one bite because they were too full. I didn't really care too much and just took it as an interesting story because this didn't really affect me, but it did leave a horrible impression. After the customers were done with everything, they sent their checks with 2 coupons. Now, our company's policy around coupons are pretty strict because it would only allow for a single coupon for each table to prevent customers from splitting their orders and leaving a coupon in every single one of them. I took the $5 off, printed the receipt, and sent it back to the waitress. She then comes back saying that the customer was complaining about how the second coupon wasn't used, even though it was clearly said that only 1 coupon for a table in the back. I was pretty grouchy and I couldn't be bothered after 4 hours of sleep, so I just took the price off for the hush puppies that they had, and I sent the receipt back. The cards got swiped, the money was paid, and tips were given. So at this point, you would probably be expecting the customer to leave. Well, unfortunately, we can't be that lucky, because this entitled Karen throws a fit in a way that I honestly never expected. A couple minutes later, an old lady stomped up to the front with a poor waitress in tow, demanding to know why the second coupon didn't take $10 off their order, but instead only took off $5.15. Technically, that was an invalid coupon because we didn't have any entrees below $10, and nowhere did it say that it would take $10 off their check. I tried explaining that she didn't order any entrees below $10, so I just took the hush puppies off the order. She then said, "But that says $10. I didn't really catch her point, and I just said to her, "And so what?" She then said, "So I should get $10 off." I tried explaining again that no, the coupon gives you a free entree under $10, which you didn't order. This entitled Karen then looks at me and says, "Hello, can you read?" She started waving her hands in front of my face, lifted the coupon, and closely underlined the $10 with her nails. $10? This cycle goes on a couple of times, with our voices slowly getting louder, before she burst at the seams, screaming that she wants a refund. So I just gave up and decided to give her the $10 off. Worst comes to worst, I'll just pay out of my own pocket. There were literally customers waiting behind her, and I might as well get this over with. Just when I tell her fine, she took the opportunity to taunt with her daughter recording as backup. "Hush puppies aren't an entree, they're appetizers. I should be getting $10 off my entree. Can you even read?" At this point, she had a crooked smile on her face. Now, there were plenty of cards I could have played here, with the pettiest being the race card, but I just got angry and I decided to argue. I won't lie, some of the stuff I said belonged to a fantasy novel with how cringe some of the lines were. I said to her, "You know what? No, I'm not going to give you the discount." This entitled Karen then requests to see a manager, so I say to her, "Well, congratulations. You're speaking to the manager right now," which is something I just pulled out of thin air. And I then said to her that the final answer is no. The entitled Karen then says, "You're obviously not the manager because I've already spoken to a manager. You shouldn't be working front desk with your attitude." I respond to her by saying, "Good for you, but the final answer is still no." Our voices have been steadily rising at this point, and the actual manager walked in and tried to break us up. Then the funniest thing happened. Her daughter tried to gaslight me and directly lie to the manager, and maybe to her camera that was recording me for TikTok or whatever. "We've been polite all this time, but you've been standing here calling us stupid." And she said this in a matter-of-fact way. So now I hated this girl way more than her mom. She is the textbook example of a gaslighter, all the way down to the dumb side smirk and how she makes you feel dumb when you've done nothing but defend your point. She kept gassing up her mom and playing the perfect Karen supporting role by trying to find any moral high ground. She even tried to pit the waitress against me using the tip, saying that she might not get a tip because of me. It ended with the manager caving in and giving them the discount, and they left happy and scot-free. Honestly, I think I should have just held it in a bit better. And now there's a video of me floating around somewhere, acting like a complete jerk, and I have gained nothing because of it. I felt super frustrated at the manager, but now I understand there was nothing she could do, and these Karens were just super obnoxious. That is a really disappointing finish. I was hoping the manager would have some some kind of backbone and tell them to get lost for talking to their employees like that. I mean, the way they're acting is just so inappropriate. People who go to restaurants like this just to try and work the system and have some kind of advantage moving forward are honestly terrible people. Like, think about it. You're trying to have a night out, but guess what? People are trying to work as well, and they don't need you sending back food all the time, complaining constantly about the most ridiculous things, and then trying to turn it around and be like, no, you're the one with the problem. Like, the only person with the problem in this situation is this entitled Karen. So I don't blame you as well for the way you acted. I would have been so upset as well, especially if someone was getting in my face and screaming at me about stupid stuff like this. Those entitled Karens were just being obnoxious, and you absolutely did not deserve to be treated that way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My husband refuses to wear a suit or dress nicely for my brother's wedding, and despite my repeated attempts to try and get him to do just that, he is now calling me mean and controlling for trying to make him dress up and look nice. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. I am a 31-year-old female, and I've been married to my husband, who's 40 years old, for a little over a year and a half. We've been together for 3 years in total. One thing about him is he hates wearing suits. He will not wear a tie, will rarely wear a button-up shirt, and if so, it will not be tucked in. He says it makes him uncomfortable. For our wedding, he did wear a very nice suit, but decided to not wear a tie. Now, don't get me wrong, I tried, but he refused. And obviously, it wasn't going to be my hill to die on, as this was the person I wanted to marry most importantly. But despite all that, he did look really good on the day. Now, we've been to another dozen weddings together ever since then, and whilst they don't usually specify dress codes, in our culture, we tend to dress up for weddings. So usually, I'm very formal, and he will wear a button-up shirt not tucked in, with the occasional casual blazer. He is always the most underdressed person, but he doesn't care as long as he is comfortable. Of course, this bothers me, but I don't say anything for these occasions. Sometimes I suggest wearing darker colors to dress up the outfit more, but that's as far as I go. However, my brother's wedding is coming up, and he is insisting on wearing the same wedding guest outfit he usually wears. This is upsetting me, as although there will be no bridal party, as he is part of the family, he will have an important role in the wedding. He will just stand out being dressed so casually, especially for family photos, and it upsets me that he doesn't want to make an effort for my brother's wedding. He still has his wedding suit, and he won't even wear the suit pants, and definitely won't tuck his shirt in and wear a belt. I cracked and told him that I will be embarrassed to stand next to him on the day, and now he's upset and called me controlling. Now, I don't think I'm being unreasonable because I've dropped this for all other weddings, and I accept that he won't wear a suit, but I think he should at least compromise by dressing up a little bit more, tucking his shirt in, wearing a belt, etc. What should I do? First off, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation. Your husband is being really obnoxious. Like, seriously, it's not like he's wearing that suit all day. I could understand if he wore a suit for a living and he was like, no, I really just don't like suits. But it sounds like he's just being straight up lazy. Like, honestly, buddy, nobody likes wearing a suit. No one likes being stuck in that weird monkey suit where you can't move around and you feel very constricted and really hot and weird. Like, honestly, I'm right there with you. But when it comes to major events in other people's lives, I'm gonna make the effort to try and look good for them and adhere to their dress code standards simply because I feel like that's the right thing to do. The fact that he's not willing to dress up and make some kind of effort to look good, especially when it comes to somebody else's event, that shows to me how selfish he really is. Like, what is his problem? Not only does he not care about you enough to make sure you don't feel embarrassed in public, but he's also being very childish. People literally wear suits to try and look nice in specific situations. And a wedding, specifically, I don't know, your wife's brother's wedding, is probably a good time to wear a suit and deal with it for maybe, what, 2 hours? Like, come on, don't be ridiculous. Get to the after party and then you can take the suit off. Or at least be a little bit more casual. Like, this is not an unusual request. Your wife says they're gonna be embarrassed standing next to you if you dress like that, but this guy still wants to go and just dress in any way he wants. He's ignoring the normal standards, and he honestly just sounds like he wants attention. He probably just wants to be the guy going against the grain and wants to look as casual as possible. And that to me is honestly super obnoxious, and he seriously should know better. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation. Your husband is being weird, and the fact that he would get upset by this is honestly so ridiculous. Am I the jerk for making my sister cry after I was completely honest about the way her husband is treating her? Here's what happened. My sister has a 16-year-old son, and his dad is a deadbeat. My sister married John a year ago. John is not his real name. He's the type that thinks anyone that's uneducated or dumb is worthless, and he clearly thinks my nephew nephew is one of them because his grades aren't ideal and he's a bit of a daydreamer. Well, they invited my family to dinner and it was bad. My nephew told us he got a job as a lifeguard a couple minutes in, and his stepdad was surprised. But instead of congratulating him, this man said, "When you said you got a job, I figured it was McDonald's. I don't think you're really qualified to be a lifeguard. Whoever hired you is an idiot. Is it that one place? For everyone's safety, I think I need to give them a call." My nephew just swore at him and then left the house. John laughed and said, "He needs to hear this. Thank God I'm here. That boy needed a father figure like me. He's been coddled by women all his life." Now, when John said that, I was seriously in shock. I seriously could not believe my ears. My husband had to step out because he was starting to laugh at this guy. I asked him if he was being serious, and he was like, "I'm being serious. That boy is an airhead because he's never had a father in his life. Tough love is what we do best. That's why sons need two parents. Dad to toughen their boys up, and moms to coddle them afterwards. You throw that off balance and you get a boy acting like a dumb blonde girl, like my stepson." I at this point just grabbed my girls and we left. My sister chased after us and was like, "We haven't even eaten yet, and John's gonna yell at me for wasting his time. Please don't leave yet." I told her I was sorry, but unlike her, I have self-respect, and I won't sit there listening to this garbage. Maybe she can, maybe she agrees, but that is her problem, and I am not making it mine. She then started to cry and said I was taking it too far. I don't have to like John, but some respect would be nice. Besides, it's not like John was saying anything to me, and he has a point about tough love. You know I love my son, but come on, it's true he isn't the brightest. John is just trying to help in his own way. And when my sister said all this, I just rolled my eyes at her, and I told her that I'm glad John's money makes her so happy and that she's willing to lose her mind over it. She just started crying again and called me all these horrible names. My husband had to drag me to the car. He told me that I was being a bit harsh. My daughters even said that I should calm down. When we got home, my mom called me and said to please give my sister a break because yeah, he's kind of a jerk, but at least he can provide for her unlike the other men she's dated and married. Apparently, this is the best they all think she's going to get, and I'm apparently ruining it for her. I'm also apparently failing to put myself in her shoes. Right now, I'm just upset. So I've gotta know, am I the jerk for making my sister cry, as well as for getting upset at what John had to say? Honestly, your sister is being an idiot. She is quite literally allowing this guy to talk badly about her son, all for the sake of financial comfort. Like, there is no excuse for this. Yeah, the parents of course are gonna try and side with their daughter, because their daughter went through some horrible stuff, and they're probably just happy that someone is taking care of her. Someone besides them is footing the bill for what's going on in her life. But I am right there with the original poster. That nephew absolutely did not deserve to be treated that way. Like, what a heartbreaking situation. Here you have, for the first time in this kid's life, a father figure who's gonna hopefully treat him nice. And instead of treating him nice, he decides to treat him like garbage, claiming that this kid is too stupid to be a lifeguard, and that he should have been working at McDonald's instead of anything else. He also basically threatened to try and get this kid fired. Like, what is he doing? That is not a good father figure. That's him being a bully, and the fact that his mother isn't standing up for her kid is honestly ridiculous and so toxic. It's also a huge red flag that the sister's gonna say, "Oh, he's gonna yell at me for wasting his time." Like, oh my gosh, you do not need that kind of treatment. She is literally afraid of his outburst, and she knows he's gonna throw one right when they leave. So for the sake of you and your daughter's happiness, I absolutely would not feel bad about this situation. That guy was being a jerk, he's a bully, and most likely behind the scenes, he's probably way worse to your sister than anything that anyone would know about. And I personally would not entertain dealing with his attitude in the slightest. My girlfriend is incredibly illiterate when it comes to finances, and despite the fact that I'm close to declaring bankruptcy in my life, she is still not helping our situation. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So about 2 years ago, my girlfriend lost her job in a really awful way. Her confidence was shot, and it took her about 18 months to find a new one. I racked up about $25,000 in high-interest debts just to support her. I know this was probably a mistake, and I absolutely accept and admit that I also made some poor decisions here, but a majority of that money was spent on bridging the gap from her loss of income. I love her, and I wanted to show her the same support that was shown to me by my loved ones in my early 20s, and this is all when I was going through something similar. She's working now and is contributing enough to cover her share of expenses. Back in March, I graduated with my bachelor's, and I have a job lined up in a new city. The job pays really well and will set me up for a good career in my field. However, due to the increase in rent, my net financial financial situation will not change or will get slightly worse. I'll have about $700 a month left over for groceries, health insurance, student loan payments, and incidentals. So I don't think I need to tell you how quickly that's gonna go. I was laid off last month from the job I had while going through school. We have enough saved up to move, and I'm currently collecting UI, but I'm having to rely a bit on family and friends to make the sudden difference in the meantime. I am looking, but we live in a small town. There are not many jobs, and many of the jobs that are available are part-time and do not pay as well as UI. My girlfriend is planning on transferring to a new location in the city with her employer. However, I have several concerns here. In the last 5 years that I've known her, she's had 5 jobs and has been unemployed for about 24 months in aggregate. Her ability to hold a job is suspicious in my opinion. At first, I thought it was just because she worked with awful people, but after 5 jobs and 3 terminations, I have to ask. As mentioned above, I will have very little money left at the end of the month. If she loses her job after we move, I will be in an extremely tight or negative cash flow situation. There's a real chance I'll have to declare bankruptcy. Speaking of bankruptcy, I will be working in a field where, while it won't be a career ruiner, it is definitely career limiting. If I was 25, I would be less concerned, but at my age, I have serious concerns over how it will affect my career trajectory, as well as my earning potential. Also, as well as my other financial goals. I've already suffered a significant setback in taking on that debt. I've shown her a rough financial breakdown of what the move is gonna look like, and I have flat out told her that I don't think that we can afford one. But she won't shut up about buying a car. All of the ones that she has looked at are mid-2000 makes and models with about 100,000 miles on the car. I'm not a car guy by any means, but I've known enough people with these cars to know that they just don't last more than a year or two. I can't get her to consider an import, even though she seems to like mine just fine. Even then, it might be bearable if it was a cash purchase from a site like Craigslist or something like that, but she keeps looking at financing through dicey dealerships. I've been paying over $700 a month on the loans that I took out just to refinance the debts incurred from her period of unemployment. I've made it clear several times that I really wanted to get the smallest one paid off all the way up until before we move to free up some cash flow that we can use in a new, more expensive city. Despite agreeing to this, she has done very little of the things that we talked about doing to tackle this, has volunteered no information, and becomes incredibly defensive if asked about it. I now feel like absolute garbage for making this about money, but I really don't feel like it's fair to me and all of my hard work to put myself in a position where my career might be hamstrung before it even gets off the ground. On top of that, her actions or the lack thereof through the last few years don't inspire much confidence. If I broke up with her and moved in with a friend, I could cut the amount of money I would need to survive until this job starts by about 60%. There are other issues besides this, but this is a big one. I honestly feel like I've tried everything to make this work. I'm out of ideas and I'm nearly out of energy. Is there anything left here that I might have missed? What should I do? Honestly, it really doesn't seem like she's a partner in the slightest. Like, it really seems like there's a lack of maturity on what's actually happening right now. Like, does she not understand that you're on the verge of declaring bankruptcy? Like, you're about to say, hey, I have no money left and we have nothing. Meanwhile, she's looking for cars and doing all this other stuff. Like, what is going on with her? She's had 5 jobs in the last 5 years. She's been fired from 3 of them. I mean, that is honestly not a good sign, and it kind of shows to me that no, she is not responsible with her work, and to trust her to move to a new place and somehow support you as well as her is honestly like a gamble. Like, it's really kind of up in the air. Is she going to get fired from this job as well? Or are we even going to be able to stay afloat? I mean, that's just so unfair for you to be stuck in. You also took out a lot of loans, and you've incurred a lot of interest just to support her when she was unemployed. And I still just can't get over the fact that she's looking for a car. Like, at a time like this, seriously, being with someone like that and the lack of maturity as well as the lack of understanding of what's happening right in front of us must be the most infuriating thing on planet Earth. And you do not deserve that in the slightest. That is seriously so obnoxious, and that really would put a strain on pretty much any relationship I can think of. Financial literacy and trying to make and keep a budget is absolutely a part of a relationship. And the fact that she's not respecting that and is instead trying to make unnecessary purchases is really, really bad. I mean, this guy only has about $700 a month to pay for all this other stuff. And let me tell you, especially with the health insurance and student loan payments alone, literally this guy's gonna have like no money left over. She needs to step up and do her fair share, because right now it seems like she's just taking advantage of you. She is more of a dependent and a liability than a partner. And I know that's harsh to to say, but you know what? This lady is 45 years old. She needs to have some kind of financial sense, because her financial sense is more akin to a 17-year-old. So when it comes to thinking about possibly breaking up, I don't blame you with where you're standing. Like seriously, something needs to change. And if she is unwilling to change and make some kind of effort in this relationship, especially when it comes to the money that you guys literally don't have, then I seriously wouldn't blame you for deciding if you wanted to break up. An entitled construction contractor tries to scam my grandfather out of his new home, intentionally messing with paperwork just to try and stop the process of building this house. But in the end, this guy gets caught red-handed and eventually gets sent away to prison for 15 years. Here's what happened. So this is something that happened to my grandfather. To understand him, he was a quality control engineer for a pretty major manufacturing firm, and he was a master of aggressively renegotiating deals. He was and is a strict taskmaster, not entitled or unreasonable, but if something went wrong, you absolutely would hear from him. So he decided that he wanted to renovate his home, take the moderately big 2-story house, and add 2 new bedrooms and a master bath. He brings in a contractor and gets a quote. Says as part of the work, they'll need to completely refinish the front too. My grandfather agrees and they start to work. It's a serious effort, winds up carving open the whole front of the house and all sorts of madness. Things go well enough at first, and the deconstruction goes smoothly, but then starts the construction. At first, things were just slow going. Sluggish delivery from sources, slow permits from the city, you get the idea. Then things get really silly. It took them over 3 months to start and finish the plumbing, and 4 months for the insulation. My grandfather is paying for a lot of time and not a lot of work being done. He's irritated about the speed, but besides making some noise, there's not really much he can do about it. Bit by bit, the house starts to slowly come together. Then, as they're putting on the weatherproofing, an inspector comes in and puts a stop to the whole affair. The contractor improperly filed the plans. Now my grandfather is pretty furious by this point, but he keeps a cool enough head and starts asking what's going to be done about it with the contractor. The thinking was that they would redraft the plans and send them out for approval, and the contractor said they will do that. Well, 5 months go by. The house is just sitting there, fancy new framework still hanging in the breeze. Then all of a sudden, the contractor says he's pulling out. But this guy had no idea the nightmare he was about to unleash, because my grandfather didn't just jump straight to suing him. Oh no, sir. He took his time before getting a lawyer, and that's when things really popped off. He did his homework. He tracked down every single client that this guy had had for the last 3 years and did a deep dive in the books to figure out what had happened. It turns out that this wasn't an isolated incident, just the most egregious. As it happens, this contractor had a penchant for messing with people and ruining their lives, turning minor renovation jobs into complete dumpster fires. His modus operandi was to file the changes with the city, make a private second set of plans, start making these things based off of the second set, intentionally let the city halt the construction, then restart the project on a third draft. After talking to some of the other customers, he and 8 of the other victims collectively filed charges against him. They absolutely annihilated this guy. They took every single cent he had, which wasn't that much. His scheme hadn't actually done him that much good. They liquidated his company and got him sent to jail for 15 years in prison over fraud, and got the state to help recoup the expenses. 2 months later, a new contracting company blitzed my grandfather's renovations, and he was able to drink in his master suite to toast his master revenge. That is honestly awful. I can't imagine having my house built just to have this weird contractor basically go out of his way to try and ruin my life. Like seriously, this is an expensive project. This is not something that's just gonna happen overnight. You can't just do that to people and expect them not to retaliate in some kind of way. Like this contractor absolutely had it coming, and it's the fact that 8 other people got messed with in this way that really is just icing on the cake for this guy going to jail for 15 years. Like if this guy had just been honest from the beginning, everybody would have been paid and this guy would have had his house. But instead, he decided to try and be toxic and scam this guy. So truly, this guy absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled mother steals our table at a restaurant we were going to in Tokyo, Japan, and we were really offended by the way this all went down. Here's what happened. So to start things out, we were in a restaurant in Tokyo and followed instructions to get a table for lunch. This would consist of getting one of the tags at the door with a number on it and placing it on the table to reserve the spot. We did just that, and it was a 2-table joined area. Another lady with a child also occupied a 4-seater table, and and was staring at us slyly for some reason. I should have realized something was up right then and there. When we were queuing up, my husband noticed a woman with a baby pram going over to our table and moved a baby chair over there as well. Then she queued up right behind us. We went back and found our tag was switched. The number was different. We got our food and sat down at our table. Seeing she needed the table badly, I moved one table away from us so that she could use it. The lady was furious and got one of the staff to ask us to move. I replied in Japanese, stating that we said no, and we got the table first and booked it right away. She then came over and scolded us, and I replied again in Japanese. Then she spoke to us in English, telling us that she had the right as she has a child, and we should happily sit somewhere else. She ignored me and instead directed to my husband in English, making me wonder if she was not Japanese and obviously appealing her situation to a man. Anyways, my husband said to her, "You could have asked us nicely instead of trying to switch our tags," but she claimed it was empty. We asked for the CCTV to be shown, of which both staff and her paled. My husband felt this was beneath us to argue. She was obviously throwing out the "I'm a mother" card, so we then told her that since she wanted it so badly, she could have our table and the food. So we left, and then we realized, since the shop was useless at supporting us, we wanted our money back. So we went back to get a refund. The whole time, I interpreted for my husband to get the refund. I saw the lady and the child who swapped our card, and she was staring at us with a worried look on her face, perhaps wondering if we were going to complain about her. Anyways, when we got the refund, we walked out and she pretended to feed her child. I just said to her, "I hope you are proud of your values to your kids after your self-entitled behavior earlier." I didn't bother to translate. I'm sure she got my meaning. Honestly, my guess is that she hasn't done this only once. This has probably happened multiple times. This situation was so surprising. We have never had this situation in Japan of parental self-entitlement, so we were very disappointed, as we have visited a few times and we love the place. It did not spoil our holidays, but made me now more cautious when going to such places, and to sit there while another person orders. I come from a country that has a lesser system than this restaurant in question, and so far, if anyone wants a table that seems empty and they have more people, they will ask politely and usually will be okay about it. But overall, it was seriously disappointing. That really is a weird situation. I can't say that I've ever heard of anybody dealing with that when they visit Tokyo. I have some friends that go to Japan basically like once a year, and they usually stay for just about a month, and they have never dealt with anything like that ever in Japan. They say that the country is really nice, and they always have a really good time. So the fact that there's entitled people over there who would act like that is seriously crazy to me. That is not something I would ever expect, but I guess it goes to show you that anybody, anywhere can be entitled, regardless of the language you speak or the country you come from. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that her home decor is the reason I won't be hosting a work gathering at her apartment? Here's what happened. I've been with my girlfriend for over a year now. I'm a 32-year-old male and she is 29 years old. She's smart, funny, a bit quirky, and has a serious job with a good salary. We have a great time together and generally get along very well. The only thing is her choice in home decor is bizarre, to put it frankly, and not something you think a normal grown adult would be into. Her apartment is definitely a reflection of herself and her interests, and that's not in the best way though. My girlfriend has wall dedicated to animation in one room of her apartment, like Futurama pieces and etchings of some weird triangle guy. Then there's a wall of frame preserved insects in another room, but not insects like butterflies or moths. Instead, she displays tarantulas, beetles, and large stick insects. Her bathroom has a subtle theme of the ocean, which is pretty common, but instead of starfish or shells, she has a little anglerfish nightlight, a small vampiric squid painting, and then a framed diagram of what apparently is a goblin shark right by the toilet. I would say a majority of her home decor and furnishings are okay. The apartment itself is very modern and sleek. It's just the random decor and almost juvenile-ish themes like cartoons, insects, and bizarre ocean creatures that is kind of off-putting. So this is where I might be the jerk in this situation. I avoid bringing people over to her place, especially people from my job, because of how juvenile it looks. Everyone's impressed when they see the high-rise, but that quickly fades once you enter. The one time I brought a work colleague over, they ended up telling me afterwards that they found her insect wall terrifying. I work in finance, and appearances and first impressions are very important. My office will hold casual gatherings where we get together for a few drinks, some good food, and we rotate hosts around the office. And this time, it's my turn. The problem is my place is under some construction construction, and it's not an ideal place to be right now, so I've been staying with my girlfriend. My girlfriend suggested that we host my colleagues here since she has the space and thinks that it would be fun. I told her I planned on skipping my rotation and seeing if the next person would be okay with hosting early. She kept pressing on why I didn't want them over here, so I finally said it's because her home decor is strange and not something a grown woman would have, and also that her insect wall horrified the one colleague that did come over. My girlfriend got mad and said that at the end of the day, it's not my space and these things bring her joy. She also said that she is indeed an adult woman, which is exactly why her apartment is decorated in such a manner. I love my girlfriend, I really do, and it's okay to have different interests, but does an adult really need to decorate with them besides a few things here and there? I mean, my own mother asked if my girlfriend was autistic after she saw the entire apartment for the first time. So please, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that her home decor is the reason I won't host a work gathering at her place? First off, I kinda get the vibe that this guy's mom only asked if they're autistic to try and make some kind of subtle jab or some kind of like insulting comment about her, and that honestly is not okay. That's really messed up and I'm not okay with that in the slightest. But also, I kind of side with the girlfriend in this situation. It seems like you have no interest in any of her interests, and you don't have to be so judgmental about it either. If that was my girlfriend and she was so expressive about the things that she enjoyed, I for one would find this really cute and really endearing. She knows what she likes, and personally, I can get on board with that, even if I don't completely agree with what she enjoys. But to sit there and act like your girlfriend's the problem, and that her interests are somehow gonna terrify the guests, honestly shows a lack of confidence you have in your girlfriend. Look, in my opinion, you don't need to bring your workmates over to her place, but I personally think that the bigger issue here is that you look down on your girlfriend based on the interests that she has, whether it's insects or the anime as you put it, which by the way, Futurama is not a children's show. That is very much a young adult, if not adult show, with a lot of adult themes that are definitely not meant for children. So you're definitely wrong in that area. Overall though, your girlfriend sounds really cool, and she sounds like someone who would be really fun to hang out with and be in a relationship with. And if there's anybody who has a problem in this relationship overall, it honestly sounds like it's you. Am I the jerk for waking up extra early on my vacation just to get some me time in on the computer playing a game? Here's what happened. So currently, my girlfriend and I are on vacation in Portugal, which is very cool. We spend the whole day together, do sunbathing, and yesterday we went on a beautiful boat trip, and all in all, we enjoy our time together here. However, we have a problem in our relationship, which is driving us a bit apart, and we can't seem to find even ground. I like to game, and I recharge myself by doing so, but she doesn't understand that at all. Don't get me wrong, I fully understand that it is not simple to live with someone who loves to gaze into a display all the time, which is why I heavily restrict it when we spend time together. I give her my phone while we are out just so I can give all of my attention to her and be present. Yesterday, we came home from the boat trip and wanted to grab some dinner. She went showering and wanted to wash her hair because they were all sandy and salty from the water splashes. While she was showering, I opened my notebook and played some games while waiting for her to step out of the shower. This seemed to be a mistake. She didn't like it one bit. She came out, I finished my quest, and I got ready. After dinner, we went to sleep, and today I woke up at 6 in the morning and decided to make a coffee and start the game while she was sleeping. So I left the room and I played on mute so that she could sleep in peace. My mouse and keyboard are both extra silent. You literally hear nothing, especially when you are in the next room. However, she woke up and began to cry. She asked me, "How is it possible that you use every little time frame you get to play on that thing instead of doing something with me?" But I mean, what else can I do other than playing in time slots where we aren't together? Is she right? Am I the jerk here? What do I do? Your girlfriend is being absolutely unreasonable. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing in the slightest. Sitting there and playing video games and using your free time as you please, as limited as that might be, is completely normal. It's the same thing as watching TV or reading a book. I mean, you literally woke up early just so you could play. It's not like you're not spending any time with her. People need to enjoy free time even when they're in a relationship. They need hobbies and things outside of the relationship. Otherwise, it's just gonna drive them crazy. And it sounds like the original poster's girlfriend just doesn't want him to have that time. And that is completely unfair in my opinion. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. You literally did nothing wrong. You just wanted to try and have some free time to play some video games. And honestly, your girlfriend just needs to get over that. My friend simply can't accept the fact that men reject her and choose not to date her. And now it's starting to make things really awkward for me, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm good friends with another woman by the name of Sarah. Sarah is not her real name, and she is someone I met through some athletic social clubs and networks that we are jointly a part of. We've known each other for a couple of years now, and most of my social circle in the city I live in is made up of people in these athletic clubs, but I'm the closest to Sarah, who attends a lot of the events with me. She's created a lot of friendships through these groups too, and she also uses them as an opportunity to make romantic connections and to go on dates. I've started to notice that she does not handle rejection well when she tries but fails to date someone in these clubs. Plenty of people don't take rejection well, and this would not be a problem except that I've begun to notice that people are avoiding her when we're at events. By proxy, they're avoiding me as well. For example, there was a guy who Sarah kept texting and asking him if he had feelings for her over several months, despite him never asking her on a date and insisting he didn't have feelings for her. She showed me the text messages where he said that he was not interested, but told me that he was just denying his true feelings as he was just too afraid to show them. Now, when we go to events, he avoids her and has begun to avoid me too, even though we got along fine before. But you know what? I definitely don't blame him for this. I've begun to notice that this is a pattern, and I'm concerned by how inappropriate this behavior is. She'll tell someone that she's interested in him romantically, and when he does not reciprocate, she'll continue to believe that he is secretly attracted to her, but won't date her because of some kind of reason. She'll keep trying to flirt with them and try to talk them into confessing that they have feelings for her. Most recently, there's a guy who she claims must have some kind of dysfunction issue, if you know what I mean, and that's why he won't date her. This is in spite of the fact that she showed me a text message where he clearly stated that he is simply not interested in pursuing a relationship. He's a sweet person who is an organizer of some of our regular events and was bothered by how insulting that claim is to him. I really like Sarah, and she's a great friend to me, but I find it extremely distasteful how uncomfortable she is making people feel. I also worry that our closeness is starting to affect how I'm viewed in these groups. While I'm not good friends with any of the men that she has done this to, I don't want to alienate myself within my own social networks that I've established for myself. I never know what to say when she is telling me about these guys. Sometimes I just want to say to her, he's just not into you, and you need to believe him when he tells you that. I'm afraid this will deeply upset her since she takes rejection very poorly. I have no idea how to approach this. Do I ignore it? Do I talk to her about this? What should I do? First off, it's safe to say that Sarah is straight up delusional. She is literally not taking no for an answer. Like, that is unbelievably creepy and inappropriate. Like, she is basically going up to these guys and trying to force them to confess some kind of attraction to her when they've made it very clear that no, I don't like you. Like, seriously, that is not okay. And I also don't think it's on you to try and fix this problem either. She's ostracizing herself basically on her own, and unfortunately, you're getting caught in the crossfire in the process. That's not fair for you in the slightest, and you don't deserve to have your reputation literally taken away from you, all because of your association with this Sarah lady. So I don't blame you if you want to try and get away from her. You can try the tough love conversation where you're like, hey, you need to grow up. Literally, we're both in our 30s, and it looks like this guy doesn't like you, or something like that. Or you can slow roll your way out of there and just be like, okay, we're done. I can't do this anymore. Either way, if I was in your shoes, some kind of change absolutely needs to happen because her behavior is incredibly creepy. And by associating with her, you are unfortunately getting wrapped up in all of this. Am I the jerk for not thinking about my other bridesmaids' feelings when buying a wedding dress for myself? Here's what happened. So I'm a 27-year-old female and I got engaged this year. Afterwards, a friend and a bridesmaid, let's call her Jane, that's not her real name, suggested going dress shopping when two other friends would be in town visiting from California. The out-of-town friends asked to make the appointment on Thursday at 3 p.m. since they all work from home. My work is flexible and Jane also agreed. Days before the appointment, Jane sends a text that she won't be able to make it anymore. This bridal salon and most others close by 5 or 6 p.m. on the weekdays, and the four of us were traveling on Friday, so Thursday was the only time that worked for the girls visiting from out of town. Jane had also attended my first wedding dress appointment a few weeks prior. At the appointment, I of course wasn't looking at my phone since it was in the dressing room while trying on dresses. Eventually, I find a dress that I really love. At some point, Jane texted in a group chat asking for an update of some kind. The friend who is a bridesmaid, let's call her Nancy, also not her real name, sent a photo and said, "We may have found the dress." Jane responded by saying, "Interesting." I ended up buying the dress. The four of us, including Jane, had plans 3 hours later to all hang out. I was excited to show her my dress when she got there and tell her that I did buy it. When When she got to my house, the first thing she said was, "Did you buy a dress?" And I excitedly told her that yes, I did. She didn't get excited and just stared at me for about 5 to 10 seconds. I half-jokingly said, "What, are you mad that I bought a dress when you weren't there?" She said, "Yes, I am. Hope you guys have fun tonight." And then she turned around and left my house. Within 10 minutes, she texted me saying things like, "I'm so upset with you. If you thought I wouldn't be upset about this, you're out of your mind. There are other people's feelings that you need to account for. You need to get a grip." She even called me a bridezilla. She came back over and she cried and yelled at me and continued to tell me that I was selfish because I wasn't thinking about her while trying on my wedding dress. That I was selfish for not thinking about other bridesmaids, my sisters, my mom, etc. She started to rank my friends and created a hierarchy of my bridesmaids and told me that it's absolutely messed up that I bought a dress with Nancy and a friend who isn't a bridesmaid. She also told me that the wedding dress was the one she really cared about, and she couldn't care less about any other thing about my wedding. For the rest of the weekend, we put aside our differences and we were able to get along. But now that the weekend is over, I can't stop thinking about all of this. She is still putting blame on me for what happened last weekend, and I'm seriously considering getting rid of her as a bridesmaid. But I also know that would end the friendship that we have. She hasn't acted like this before, and I know that part of the reason she acted this way is because she's insecure about how close I am with Nancy and feels threatened. So am I the jerk for not thinking about her or apparently anybody else when getting my wedding dress? What should I do? If I was in your shoes and I had her as a bridesmaid, I would absolutely say to her, "Hey, I think you've got to go. I don't appreciate the way you talk to me and the giant scene you made over me getting my wedding dress. That was inappropriate, and personally, I don't want you in my wedding." And then I would leave it at that. That is seriously insane to me that she's calling you a bridezilla and acting like you're the problem. Her saying that you need to get a grip and how there are other feelings that you need to account for, all of that is literally just projection. This lady is nuts. There's no way this is appropriate. Like seriously, this is your wedding. This is your wedding dress that you're buying for yourself. And the only opinion that matters in this case is yours. Not hers, not your mom's, nobody's. It's only up to you and what you want to wear. So personally, I would let the chips fall where they may when it comes to this friendship. Because from the sounds of it, she sounds incredibly entitled. And if anything, if the friendship falls apart, it's gonna be because of her, not because of anything that you did. An entitled flight attendant kicks me off of the plane, claiming that I wasn't actually a doctor when they called asking for one. And despite the fact that I saved a patient's life on the plane, I am removed from the plane by police presence under the false accusation that I was impersonating being a doctor, with this eventually leading to months worth of litigation as well as lawsuits. Here's what happened. So for some background to begin with, I'm a doctor. This event happened a few years ago when I was a junior doctor. I was so shiny you could use me for a shaving mirror. I also had a career before I did medicine, so I was about 30 years old when this happened. I had been a doctor for about 8 months, and I was going on a trip with an airline that has this weird obsession with putting pictures of kangaroos everywhere. And this was with my then fiance and some of our friends going on a trip to Bali. The plane had just taken off, maybe 15 minutes in the air, when the flight crew say over the intercom the words that every doctor dreads to hear on a plane. They asked if there was a doctor on board. After looking around and seeing that no one else was getting up, I reluctantly head forward to the crew area to introduce myself. Looking very grateful for my presence, a flight attendant shows me to where the passenger in question is sitting. I walk up to a man who looks half alive. Thankfully, he has a medic alert bracelet and is still conscious enough to tell me exactly what's going on. He has Addison's disease, which is an autoimmune disease affecting the adrenal glands, and he feels like he is having an adrenal crisis. Basically, he is in shock due to a lack of hormones that the adrenal gland secretes, which is big trouble. You can pass away in a few hours if untreated. Now, this is normally managed initially by a hydrocortisone injection, followed by several days of care in the nearest hospital. Unfortunately, he did not have the right documentation to be able to bring his auto-injector onto the plane, so instead it's in his checked luggage. This is not good. So I tell the flight attendant to inform the pilot that we need to get this man to a hospital as soon as humanly possible. Another flight attendant was in the process of talking to an on-call medical advice service that airlines use for such emergencies, and the doctor on the other end agrees with my assessment. The plane turns around, heading back to the airport that we just came from. I have a conversation with the on-call service, and they were amazing people. I wish I found out the name of the organization so I could shout them out in some kind of way. A boring doctor conversation happens. I get given a plan for the patient on on the plane, and honestly, I felt awesome about it. The aircraft had a surprisingly well-stocked first aid kit on board, so I began administering fluids to my new patient while all of this is happening. As I am doing so, a woman comes up and introduces herself as a nurse, showing me her work badge. Don't ask me why she had one on the plane, I honestly have no idea. Great, the extra set of experienced hands will be useful. I ask her to start the fluids once I get a line inserted in the patient, and then recheck his vitals in a few minutes to see how he is responding. The flight attendant who initially took me to the patient then tells me that the nurse should be able to handle it from here, and that she would like me to return to my seat. Okay, that's weird. Her demeanor is a bit off, but I never noticed at the time. But there is nothing else I can do for the guy with onboard resources. We don't have the medicine he needs, and the nurse was perfectly happy to sit with him and alert me if anything goes downhill. So I go back to my seat, I have done a good job, and honestly, that's not a bad thing for such a shiny new doctor. Fast forward 20 minutes, and the plane has landed again, and we appear to have gone to an empty gate somewhere away from the main terminals. The same flight attendant comes up and asked if I could please go and speak to the paramedics at the front of the plane as they board. So I say, sure thing. So I head up to the front of the plane where I'm met by two very serious looking police officers. They say to me, "Sir, would you mind stepping off the plane for a moment? We would like to have a chat with you." I think to myself, uh-oh, what did I do? I of course comply and I step off the plane, after which I'm taken about 2 minutes away from the plane and put in an office. They say to me, "Are you aware that impersonating a doctor is a serious offense?" I then ask what this is all about, and I am told that the cabin crew called ahead to say that a medical student impersonating a doctor was treating a patient on board the aircraft. They asked for my ID and any documentation that I can provide to prove that yes, I am a doctor, which is a slight problem. While I can provide my registration number, which every doctor in my country has one, and it can be looked up by an individual registry online, my passport, my wallet, my ID, everything is in my carry-on bag under my fiance's seat. One officer steps out to talk to someone, and I assume they're going to get my carry-on off the plane, while the other officer continues to talk to me. I later found out that the nurse who helped me vaguely recognized me from somewhere. I had been on placement at her hospital as a medical student the year before, and she told the flight attendant that she thought I was a medical student. Rather than talk to me about it, they assumed the nurse was right. Remember, I am 30 years old and I look like it. And they then took the steps to separate me from the patient. I was so focused on the patient that I never noticed the change in body language from the cabin crew, or really took notice of the oddity of asking me back to my seat. Then again later, they lied to me to get me to exit the plane quietly. The officer who had stepped out came back after what felt like an hour or so, and through police magic, was somehow able to verify who I was and that I was actually a doctor, which is really good. I was halfway doubting myself for a minute there, but they hadn't thought to speak to the airline about all of my belongings. They let me go and take me back to where the plane was. The only problem was that the plane wasn't there. They had refueled and taken off again. So now I'm stuck in an airport on the wrong side of passport control without any form of identification, no home key, no money, no phone, nothing. I hadn't even been able to speak to my then fiance or any of my friends, so they had no idea what was going on. I had just vanished from their perspective, and no one would answer their questions throughout the entire flight, or even after they landed. The airline I was flying with also had the gall to try and deny any wrongdoing. They refused to transfer me to another flight as I was asked to leave the plane, so I must have been in the wrong, and so they did not want a disruptive passenger on board one of their aircrafts. And oh yeah, I had no passport with me. As far as they were concerned, I should just go away and leave them well alone. They even tried to prevent me from using their phone to call somebody for help. I ended up having to borrow the phone of one of the now very helpful police officers just to call my now father-in-law to come and pick me up. I had to stay with them for a week without any clothes or toiletries until my wife got back with all my stuff because I didn't have a key to get into my apartment. Thankfully, I managed to contact her after she landed, so she at least knew that I was safe, but she stayed with our friends and enjoyed her holiday. No sense in both of us being stuck at home. They even tagged me in all of the photos of them over there. In the end, I managed to win a claim through small claims court, but it took an awfully long time to process. I got my money back with a small amount of damages. Throughout the entire experience, despite witness statements from other passengers, the airline still adamantly refused to admit that they had done anything wrong. There is still ongoing litigation revelation, which I am oh so looking forward to, so I will not be directly naming the airline that is totally not easy to find with a quick Google search. Nowadays, I try to get some alcohol in my system as soon as possible once I board a plane, so that I could refuse to assist due to being impaired. Also, I'll never fly that airline ever again. That is honestly insane to me. The cabin crew, as well as everybody who said this guy isn't a doctor, are absolute morons. Like seriously, you have a patient here who is obviously sick and could seriously be injured if they don't get the help they need. Who in their right mind would volunteer and be like, I'm a doctor, bring me up there? Like no one's gonna actually do that. And the fact that they thought this guy was faking it simply because of his age is honestly disgusting. The original poster goes on to say that he eventually settled in court with a much heftier lawsuit that forced this airline to write a written apology to him, which is something he wanted from the beginning. I mean, just think about the circumstances that they put this guy in. He was stuck at the airport with none of his belongings. All of his stuff, even his passport, all of it was taken away from him. And the cabin crew even lied to him just to get him off the plane, and then they bounce out of there after refueling the plane. I mean, this is seriously crazy to me. And this shows a distinct lack of customer service that is seriously just mind-boggling to me. And the guy who was sick even had a full recovery, and he was really happy that this guy was there to help him out. Also, that nurse was a complete jerk as well. She literally just assumed, oh, it's clearly a medical student. Like, didn't you think for a second that maybe he graduated? Maybe he became an actual full-fledged doctor, and that's why he came up to the front of the plane? Like, you literally threw him under the bus for no reason. But overall, I am so glad this worked out in the original poster's favor, because the way he was treated was honestly so disgusting, and he deserved every kind of apology and settlement that this airline could possibly give him. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My manager tried to convince me to lie to the Department of Labor, just to try and hide all the shady things they've been doing at the restaurant I work at. But instead, I decided to tell the truth. And now I'm not sure if my job is on the line, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So the restaurant I work at is currently being investigated by the Department of Labor due to an employee who recently left, filing a complaint of unpaid wages. Management asked me to lie about some things, but I told the truth. I just want to make sure I didn't break some unwritten code of restaurants by telling the Department of Labor the truth. Now, this employee is a very hard worker, dedicated a lot to the restaurant, and brought a lot of sales through their talent and their customer service skills. They were pretty vocal about how unhappy they were with management and their labor practices. I and the rest of the staff know that management do some shady things, especially when it comes to our pay and our tips. But at the time I got hired, I desperately needed a job that would allow me to focus on school while also paying my rent, so I was willing to overlook it just to make ends meet. For some background about the restaurant, it is small and it's family owned, and we've been understaffed for the past 5 months. While it is the type of restaurant to have a chill vibe, both myself and the employee were doing the work of 2 people during our shifts, since it would only be us taking care of things. Rarely would we actually get breaks, since we would have to work through them, and yet we would still have to clock out for them. Now, I'm not sure if I would still get paid for the 30 minutes to an hour that I would be clocked out for, but I always felt like my paychecks didn't reflect the hours that I worked. Management also does mess things up and does illegal things with our tips and overtime pay, but I was so focused on school this past semester, I did not have the energy to bring it up. Before my interview with the investigator, management asked me to lie about the number of staff that worked here, and if asked, I should conceal specific employees. But you know what? I told the investigator the truth. If management is underpaying the former employee, they are also probably underpaying everybody, especially the employee they specifically asked me to lie about. I know the information I give to the investigator is supposed to be confidential, but I totally forgot that the cameras have audio and that management probably knows everything I said, since I had a very off-putting conversation with my manager since the interview. I don't care about getting a big paycheck. I just don't want to be involved in any wage or labor violations, especially towards these specific employees I was asked to conceal. We are in a very high cost of living area, and I find it so messed up that they are messing with our pay when things are so tough out here. Does anyone have any advice on how to navigate this situation? I am looking for a new job, but I'm not able to quit right away. What should I do? You did the right thing by telling the truth. First off, you need to understand you don't owe your boss anything. They literally asked you to lie to the Department of Labor. Like seriously, these people are sketchy. And it's really funny that it's a small family-owned business, because from my my experience, that is typically where this stuff happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen at like large chains or anything like that, but from my own personal experience, it kind of relates to what you've been through. And that's not fair at all. You are literally just trying to make ends meet, and these people are trying to save face and asking you to lie for them. And it's probably smart that you get another job, because the owner of this restaurant absolutely does not care about your well-being. Instead, they would try to convince you to commit a federal crime by lying to a federal agency or department. Like, seriously, these people suck, and you deserve so much better out of an employer. So hopefully you're able to find something fast, because these people that you work for are super sketchy, and they absolutely deserve what's about to come their way. Am I the jerk for wanting to sell my house and move into a place of my own, and this all being without my boyfriend, who is dragging his feet on proposing and potentially buying a place with me of our own? Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 2 years. We have been talking about getting engaged for months now and started to look for a place together. He has constantly been telling me that he's going to propose, and even got me to look at engagement rings together, and has been saying he's going to talk to my dad to ask for my hand in marriage for months now. The issue that we're facing is my parents are super traditional and don't agree with us living together before marriage. I know we're both adults and can do whatever we want to do, but we don't want to lose their respect. So my boyfriend said he would talk to my dad and ask him for my hand in marriage, and also talk to him about us moving in together once we're engaged and closer to our wedding date. We had a family barbecue yesterday with both my boyfriend's parents and my parents, and my boyfriend said he would talk to my dad then. Well, guess what? He didn't. I asked him afterwards why he didn't talk to him, because he had lots of opportunities, and he basically said he'll ask him another time and that he's not in a rush, and told me to be patient. It's confusing because he's the one who brought it up and told me that he was going to talk to him so we can figure out our living situation. I then asked him if he's having second thoughts or is getting scared, but all he says is, "It's gonna be soon, please be patient." He is always talking about our future and proposing soon, or whatever that means, and making me look at houses and rings, but isn't taking the steps to make it happen, and I'm getting tired of it. I'm frustrated because I desperately want to get out of my living situation, and we've been looking at houses for a while now, and this is just delaying everything, and it's pretty frustrating not having any control in any of this. I hate my house that I currently own. I bought it off my grandparents after my grandfather passed away, and it's just old with a lot of issues in a really bad area, and I've just had a lot of bad memories in it. I've communicated this to him many times, and he knows that living in it is making me very depressed, and I just want out no matter what the cost. I stay at my boyfriend's for the majority of the time, but his apartment is so small, so I can't have any of my stuff there, and he won't give me a key to his place. I'm just going back and forth every single day, and I'm exhausted of this lifestyle. He won't give me a key because his mom has the spare, and he doesn't want to ask her for it, which doesn't make any sense. He's also been telling me that he'll be giving me a key soon for months. I have been super patient, but I'm getting really frustrated now, and I'm starting to resent him for the way he's delaying things. I thought about this, and I've waited too long for him to make a decision, and I don't think he'll be ready for a while, so I'm just gonna sell my current house and buy another one. But I feel like I would be a jerk if I didn't include him in it, as well as for not buying a home together. What should I do? I mean, if you want to sell your house and buy a new one, that is absolutely your prerogative. Like, you have every right to buy whatever you want to buy, especially if your boyfriend is sitting there not doing any of the things that he said he was gonna do. Like, seriously, that is so annoying, and it's pretty obvious that he is having second thoughts. Like, seriously, that's what I think is going on, at least. It seems like he really is being faced with the reality of getting married, and it's kind of freaking him out, and that's why he's dragging his feet. So I don't think you would be the jerk for getting your own house. You clearly don't like the one you're living in right now, and you would much rather live literally anywhere else. So getting out of there as soon as possible, in my opinion, wouldn't be a bad idea. And sure, he might have some kind of objection to you selling your house, but then again, if he really wanted to be involved in this process, he would have been kicking things into overdrive and getting things going. And it's also the case where he could live in this house with you as well. It would just be under your name specifically. So in my opinion, if you do decide to sell your house and buy a new one, I don't think that makes you the jerk, because your boyfriend is being very slow about all of this, and I don't blame you for trying to get out of the house that you're currently living in. Would I be the jerk if I reported the delivery driver who keeps showing up at my door in the middle of the night? Here's what's happening. So around the end of last year, one of the local fast food places started doing deliveries, and I decided to take advantage of the convenience. Because I live in a small town, most of the time it was the same delivery guy. We'll call him John, that's not his real name, and it would usually be him bringing me my food. And to begin with, it was fine. I would smile, I would say hello, say thank you so much, and then I would take my food. In October, I got COVID. It wasn't too bad, but my voice was destroyed from coughing, and in the weeks afterwards, I sounded pretty awful. I guess something about me being sick made John decide I wasn't okay in general, because he got a lot more chatty after that, always asking how I was, telling me he cared about me. It was awkward, but I figured he was just being nice. Anyways, mid-November rolls around, and he showed up at my door at almost 3 in the morning. I'm a night owl by nature, so I was still up, and there he was, visibly drunk, kinda swaying in place, going on about how he had been walking home and saw my lights on as he was passing, and decided to stop by and chat. Now, I am a very anxious person. I'm non-confrontational by nature, so with this strange man at my door, the last thing I wanted to do was antagonize him, so I just smiled, nodded along with what he was saying, and tried to get him to leave. He asked to come inside, and I did shut that down pretty quickly, but otherwise, I don't think I was very firm in asserting my boundaries. He left after a few minutes, didn't get angry or scary or anything like that, but he did leave me pretty shaken up. I stopped ordering from that restaurant, and I didn't see him again until 2 months later when he appeared again at 2 in the morning. This time, I was in bed reading, and I chose not to engage. I could hear him calling out, asking if I was awake and if I was okay. Then he left, muttering something to himself. It's been 4 months since then, and I had let myself believe that it was all fine and that he decided to stop bothering me. But that is not what happened. Tonight at 11:30 p.m., I heard noises outside. This guy was back, slamming the doorbell, calling out to me specifically. I spoke to him through the door, told him that it wasn't okay to keep showing up, and that if it happened again, I would be calling the police. He just kept repeating that it was fine, and then eventually he left. Now, a few hours later, I'm still sitting up, wondering if I should do something this time. I'm not worried about him in the sense that I feel like I'm in danger. He's never actually done anything, but it makes me anxious wondering if he's going to show up again. And I'm so incredibly angry that he has the audacity to think this kind of behavior is okay. I don't want to make things hard for him and potentially cost him his job if I report him to his workplace. And until tonight, I wasn't super clear in telling him to leave me alone, but I feel like I shouldn't have to explain that knocking on a woman's door late at night when she's not expecting you is a bad thing. And after 3 times, I can't just ignore this anymore. What should I do? Seriously, after the first time this happened, I would have called the police right then and there. I don't care who it is. No one's gonna show up at my door at 3 o'clock in the morning, swaying around, ringing the doorbell, knocking on my door, just trying to talk. I don't think so. You're not gonna come in. I'm not gonna entertain that in the slightest. I'm gonna call the police and have them deal with that. I don't care if this guy's the nicest guy on planet Earth. He is clearly sketchy, and he obviously has nefarious intentions if he's showing up at your house at 3 in the morning. I mean, this guy is showing up unannounced to your house at all hours of the night. I mean, I don't care who you are. That's creepy regardless. He clearly has other intentions, and I would not put up with that for a second. Forget how he feels. How do you feel? Because if I was in your shoes, I would feel very much in danger. I would feel just like you, incredibly angry and upset that this guy's showing up at my house at all hours of the night. There is no way you should let this slide, in my opinion, and you absolutely need to do something about this. Whether it's reporting him to the police or reporting him to his job. Both of them probably need to know that one of their delivery drivers is acting like this. I would also set up some kind of like camera system in your house so you can have video evidence of this guy being an absolute weirdo. But hopefully this all works out for you, because the way this guy is acting is absolutely inappropriate, and you should not let that slide in the slightest, regardless of whatever consequences he might face. My entitled manager tries to get me fired after I tried to apply for the job that he got, but I decided I wasn't going to take that sitting down. So instead, I flipped this on his head, and I ended up getting him fired instead. Here's what happened. So this incident happened 2 years ago. I was one of 2 commercial writers and producers working in the production department of a local television station. Our department was responsible for producing both the newscasts and commercials for clients who purchase airtime on our station. The department is high stress. I had to manage multiple deadlines and provide creatives for about a dozen ad campaigns every single month. That being said, I always met my deadlines, and our sales department was always complimentary of my work, steering the more important clients my way. Unfortunately, managers in my department come and go with unsettling frequency. In the 9 years I was there, I had 6 different managers. Most often, the managers were passing through with their sights set on snagging upper-level management jobs somewhere in a larger television market. This meant their experience of actually doing the work of television production was often very minimal, so they had a tendency to not interfere with our work so long as clients were happy and deadlines were being met. Given that the managers were so disengaged, I told our general sales manager about my idea for saving time as well as saving money in the department, and he suggested that I apply for the production manager position the next time it opens up. So I did just that, but I didn't get the job. I was told I was too important maintaining good client relationships through my work as a producer, which is no big deal, I thought at the time. I was happy as a producer, but unfortunately, the person they did hire for the position ended up being a monumental jerk of the first order. I'll call him Bob. Bob is not his real name. The first thing Bob wanted to know was who in the department had applied for the position he now filled. I don't know what idiot in upper management thought it would be a good idea to tell him, but someone did just that. It soon became apparent he wanted to find any excuse he could to fire me, because that was just the kind of insecure idiot that he was. It began with him writing me about the time I was taking just to complete commercial productions. Then he accused me of undercharging clients in my billing. He wanted me to wear a suit and a tie, which he knew I hated. As the writing on the wall became clear, I began documenting every single interaction with him, taking notes about what was said and contradicting his accusations with facts. All the while, he is managing to upset a lot of people in our department, and the morale of pretty much everybody began to tank. Now, Bob was petty, he was vain, and he loved to brag and announce things, like how he's gonna have a lavish and wonderful vacation that he has planned. He was going to Aruba, so he would put up travel posters and printed out a ridiculous sign he taped to his office door that would say something like, "My island adventure begins in 2 weeks." All this served to remind us that he was the only one in our department who made enough money to take that kind of vacation. Eventually, an incident occurred where I missed a deadline through no fault of my own. The client wanted to change up the creatives at the last minute, so we had to bump the film shoot. Somehow, Bob got in his head that I should have been a mind reader and anticipated the client's wishes before they were communicated. He calls me into his office and begins berating me, but by that point, I had had enough. I'm the kind of person who will take a lot of garbage with patience and grace, but when I am finally pushed to my boiling point, I absolutely explode. I started yelling back and saying, "You are a liar, and if you think I don't know how to handle this client, then fine. Let's see you do it, because I am out of here." And right then and there, I walked off the job. In fact, I'm so amped up by what just transpired after leaving the office that I walk all the way home, a distance of more than 6 miles. Just as I am nearing my house, my cell phone rings, and wouldn't you guess it, it's Bob on the phone. Evidently, it just dawned on him that he would in fact have to produce the ad campaign himself because our other producer had the week off. He hemmed and hawed and finally blurted out something that was quite revealing. He said to me, "If we lose this client, we'll both get fired, and I can't afford to lose another job." I think to myself, really? So you've been fired from other jobs? What a surprise. I then tell him to go kick some rocks, if you know what I mean, because I'm not taking his garbage for 1 more minute. All the while, I'm literally trembling with the knowledge that I've walked off the job without another job to go to, and I have a wife and 2 kids to support. Thankfully, the next call I get is from the general sales manager, which is the same guy who recommended I apply for Bob's job and is the one person who basically in a roundabout way started this whole mess with Bob. By now, news of my blow up evidently made it back to him. He asked me about what happened, and I fill him in and apologize for walking off the job, while also telling him there's no way I'm working for Bob. He says to me that leaving work wasn't a good idea, so he wanted me to do him a favor and just come back, email him the details of what happened, and then he'll see what he can do. Thanks to my copious note-taking of all of my interactions with Bob, it takes me no time at all to send him the complete history of Bob's mess-ups. So I return hoping to avoid Bob. Thankfully, his door was closed, and I keep my head down in my cubicle. A half hour before quitting time, I notice our general manager and a security guard getting off the elevator together. I stand up to see where they are headed, and I am elated to see it is directly towards Bob's office. Now, what transpires is even better than the revenge option I was contemplating. Bob emerges from his office carrying a box of his belongings, including the rolled-up Aruba travel poster, and is escorted by the security guard to the elevator. Now, standing standing up in my cubicle, he turns towards me, his face beet red with embarrassment. As our eyes met, I flash an ear-to-ear grin. This moron was gone, and I've never been happier with this form of revenge in my life. Yeah, that boss sounded absolutely obnoxious. Can you imagine dealing with that on a daily basis? Some guy who is clearly upset that you applied for his job, so now he tries to make your life a living nightmare on a daily basis. But honestly, it was really smart of the original poster to literally write down all of the interactions they had with their boss, because it literally led to this loser getting fired. And by the way, this manager absolutely had it coming. They were an awful manager, and they were trying to fire the guy that almost got their job. That is such a toxic thing to try to do. I also don't blame the original poster for quitting and walking away from that job. Sure, he should have had something lined up before he left, but at that point, I wouldn't want to work there either. I would be so upset dealing with a manager who clearly does not have my best intentions in mind, and instead wants to get me fired and out of the picture, despite the fact that I'm doing all the work in the office and I get all of the good clients. So good for you for getting this manager fired, because he absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My friend keeps asking to lend me money to her because she doesn't have a job and she can't afford certain things. But at this point, it's becoming so bothersome, and I don't know how to respectfully tell her that I can no longer give her any more money. Here's what happened. So I have this friend, and we are very good friends. She is a very good and supportive friend, other than the problem I'm going to describe below. My friend is unemployed, but I work full-time. She lives with her mother, but I live on my own. Their income comes from the unemployment stipend, as well as her mother's pension, and the apartment that they rent out. My salary is a bit above average for the country I'm living in, so when my friend told me she had no money left, and her mother couldn't even afford groceries, I offered to lend her some money. She told me she would pay me back again as soon as she gets paid. I said, don't worry about that. My problem is, since the day I gave her the money, she asked me for my PayPal 2 times because she couldn't buy stuff her mother needed, and she would pay me back with the rest of the money I gave her. And this would happen in 2 installments. I said, okay, no worries, but please, I can't afford more than that. She tried asking me to pay for one more thing 2 days ago, and I said no. I don't have any more money. I don't have any spending money now, and I will probably have to borrow from my family just to get groceries at some point as well. She told me, oh, okay, no worries, thanks for telling me. Yesterday, she started telling me about the things she wants to spend on at the end of the month. I was like, yeah, cool, that's awesome. And at some point, she threw in, you can afford that, right? If not, please tell me. And I said, no, I can't. I need to save up for moving out next month. She then insisted by saying, this will be the last time I ask you to pay something, and that she will buy me an expensive gift whenever she can. I have now panicked. If I keep giving her money, my plans to move out to a bigger apartment will go to rubbish. How do I respectfully tell her that I don't have any more money to give her? Because at this point, I seriously don't think I'll ever get any of it back. What should I do? Honestly, when it comes to situations like that, the best course of action is just to be firm with your boundaries. Tell her straight up, no, I cannot give you any more money. It doesn't matter how much she begs or pleads or any other tactic she uses, you cannot give her any more money, end of story. I mean, the audacity of her to ask you if you can afford something that she wants is seriously so crazy, which basically proves to me that she's using you as an ATM, and that is honestly not fair for you at all. And you know what? You're working for a living, and she is not. She's only running off of the unemployment stipend as well as her mother's pension. I mean, come on. If anything, it's time to get to work and do something with her life. It's not fair for you to have to deal with her trying to take your money all the time, while also having to explain that no, you cannot afford that. You are literally in the middle of trying to move. So hopefully by setting some very clear boundaries with this friend, she can try and go back to being just that, a friend. Because instead, right now she's just taking advantage of your kindness. And this very well could keep happening if you don't decide to put your foot down and say enough is enough. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to stop being a pushover, or I would take away her spending privileges on our joint bank account? Here's what happened. So my wife of 5 years has a sister. She is somewhat disabled, and while this may sound contradictory, she has a condition which makes working very difficult, but not entirely impossible unless she is under a lot of stress. It's a neurological condition where she loses muscle control and makes her hit or throw stuff, and she does fall over. I have no problem with her sister. She is sweet and nice to have around. My wife loves her more than anything. She basically raised her and stepped in when her parents wouldn't or couldn't. This has led to a relationship closer to mother and daughter. My wife would constantly be paying for stuff for her sister, and this made sense to me when she was a minor and was doing much worse health-wise. Recently though, this has increasingly been getting under my skin. I am the sole provider for my household right now since my wife was pregnant and only gave birth recently. We had been spending a lot to buy her sister gifts for holidays, which she would never return the favor. Even if it was something cheap, we never got anything. We'd always take her out to events or dinner or pay for her every time. She would never even pick up the bill herself. And again, it wasn't entirely an issue until she became an adult. And now I'm fed up with it. She expects my sister to do things like pay for her to go to the doctor or invites us out to lunch and then expects us to pay. She doesn't even schedule her own appointments, and my wife takes her wherever she might ask, even if she has the ability to do it herself and we live 45 minutes away. She always talks about how she's freelancing and is making money, but then somehow has no money whenever she needs or wants anything. And I did not have an issue with this either, really. I thought my wife was being a pushover, but it's ultimately her money. That is, until recently. Now she's spending my money on her, and it's really getting me angry. I want to spend money on my daughter, but instead we're spending money on this financially irresponsible leech. I explained this to my wife in a much nicer way, but we ended up in a fight where I called her sister some pretty messed up things. I ended the conversation by telling her that I would take away her access to our joint bank account until she contributes again if she doesn't tell her sister to grow up and that she is not her mother and she is no longer a child. She cannot be dependent on people forever. I think it's an important lesson for her to learn, and if she doesn't learn it, she can get back to work and continue supporting her until she's 40 with her own money, but it's not going to be with mine. She honestly thinks this is an end of the world situation. I think it's quite clear that this is for the better. I think she's scared of hurting her sister, but at this point she is crippling her by allowing her to do nothing. Honestly, first and foremost, I think everybody kind of is at fault here, but the original poster is absolutely more at fault. I can't imagine a husband actually looking at his wife and saying to them, "You're gonna do as I say or I'm gonna cut your access to finances." Like, that is actually insane to me, and that crosses a line that is seriously not okay. Any point this guy was trying to make about how his wife is spending his money got thrown right out the window the second he tried to take some authoritarian stance over his wife. You two are equals in this situation, and guess what? Your money is her money. It also sounds like she recently took like maternity leave to give birth to their child, so guess what? She's not working at the moment. And while yes, I think it is important for your wife's sister to get on her own feet and try and have some kind of stability on her own, but it really does sound like this is a sensitive situation, and you kicking the door down and saying, "I'm gonna cut off access unless you do what I say." That is so toxic, and that really does destroy any argument you might have. That is literally not the answer. That definitely makes you a horrible husband and makes you the jerk in this situation. So hopefully this can get resolved between the two of you, because for starters, your wife absolutely should not be spending all this money on her sister, but more importantly, the language you use towards your wife is unbelievably inappropriate, and in my opinion, you absolutely need to apologize. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her baby's name is ridiculous? Here's what happened. So my friend recently had a baby and she named him hashtag. Yes, you read that right. She named her child after a social media symbol. When she first told me the name, I thought she was joking, but she was absolutely dead serious. I honestly couldn't believe it. I tried to be polite and tell her that it was definitely unique, but she kept insisting that it was a great name and that her child would be one of a kind. I just couldn't hold it in any longer, and I finally told her that the name was ridiculous and that her child would likely face a lot of ridicule and a lot of bullying in the future. She then got very upset and accused me of not being supportive of her choices. Now our mutual friends are split on the issue. Some agree with me that the name is absurd, while others think that this was too harsh and I should have kept my opinions to myself. So am I the jerk for telling my friend that her baby's name is ridiculous, or should I have just kept my opinions to myself? First off, I absolutely agree with the original poster. The name hashtag for the name of a child is seriously a stupid name for a kid, and it's also not even like a real name. It's literally just the social media symbol or the pound key on your cell phone. So their future kid is going to have a lot of nicknames. Not only will bullies call him hashtag, which by itself is already just a horrible name, they're also going to call him pound, sharp, number, or even tic-tac-toe. Like, seriously, what is this person thinking? This is not a good name for a kid. kid. In my opinion, when you're having a kid, you really need to pick a name that's not going to get them bullied, because children are horrible and they will find a way to make fun of your kid. And the fact that this lady would think this is a unique name and a one-of-a-kind name, and that somehow is going to set their child apart, is honestly the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Their kid is going to grow up hating them, and they're going to despise the fact that their name is hashtag. So no, the original poster is not the jerk here, but instead, the jerk is the parent who is seriously naming their child hashtag, which in my opinion is a horrible name for a child. My girlfriend says that I'm cherry picking her flaws, and now after dealing with some back and forth between the two of us, I am seriously considering breaking up with her. Here's what happened. So for starters, we've been in a relationship for 8 months now, and she is my first girlfriend. She has this thing where she takes hours, and I mean hours, to wake up every time. So every time I wake her up, I need to come back every 20 minutes and try and wake her up again, or otherwise she'll sleep until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. She's very grumpy whenever I try to wake her up, and as soon as she wakes up, she's all over her phone. She has a daily screen time of 12 plus hours on average. I told her both of those things bother me, and she said to me that just because I don't spend time on my phone doesn't mean that she's not allowed to, which I totally agree with. But for example, when I leave the room to grab a drink, literally for a minute, she's already all over her phone. I just feel like that's unhealthy. And when it comes to the sleep thing, she said that I don't let her rest, and that I need to stop bothering to wake her up, even though she sleeps almost 12 hours every day. Today, she refused to eat the food I made for her because she said it was too oily, and I understand that she's trying to keep her diet clean. Then she got angry and said that she's going home. Honestly, on occasions I feel like I'm walking on eggshells when talking with her. She can get angry out of the blue, and that can last minutes to hours, depending on what the reason is. A few days ago, she got mad because I didn't tell her that it's raining. Although I was bedridden and sleeping because I had a fever, she got really angry, and I spent the entire evening trying to cheer her up. Sometimes she'll leave or ignore me when things don't go her way, and whenever I don't want to do what she wants to do, like go for a walk for example, she gets upset and says, "Fine, I'll just walk myself. You never want to do things that I want to do." Even though since the start of the relationship, I've been trying to please her. Recently, I feel like we've been growing apart. She's on her weight loss journey, and I'm in my first internship program, and we both just focus on ourselves, seeing each other less and less. Today, after the food argument, we finally talked about this. I told her about the things that have been bothering me, and I told her I'm not really enjoying the relationship all that much. She said that maybe you should find someone that was raised by parents like yours, and that was absolutely a shot at me. My parents are very toxic, and I've been treated like garbage verbally throughout my entire life, and I still live with them since I can't afford to live by myself. And when she said that, that really hurt. She said that she can't change, and that she thinks I'm looking for someone like myself, and that there are other parents like mine that can raise the kind of children like I am. I don't know whether that's an insult pointed towards me or my parents, but it wasn't a nice thing to say regardless. I'm unsure that I'd want to be with a lazy person, and I'm unsure whether she's lazy or not. That's a subjective thing, honestly. But to me, spending most of your time on your phone and sleeping 12 hours a day is just pure laziness. She is very supportive of me, she encourages me, and she helps out when needed. She is, in general, a sweet soul, but I'm not sure we're meant for each other as we have different values and views. Should I try to make it work since I do love her? I sincerely enjoy most of the moments we spend together. Or should I call it quits and just work on myself? What should I do? Yeah, I really do agree with the original poster here. His girlfriend sounds incredibly lazy. She sleeps 12 hours a day. She either just doesn't get any sleep at night and she stays up all hours of the night, or she's got some kind of like medical issue that's making her sleep for long periods of time, or when you boil it down, she probably is just straight up lazy. And you know what? That's probably why she's so supportive of you. Maybe she wants you to do all the work so she can just stay at home and be on her phone. I don't think it's unreasonable to point out flaws or things that you want to try and work on in a relationship, but it sounds like she flies off the handle when things don't go her way. Like for example, the food wasn't to her liking, and so she freaked out and suddenly left. It also makes me wonder, does she even like have a job? I can't imagine that she actually has one if she is legitimately sleeping in until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is honestly absurd, and she either needs to have a doctor look at her or just get her life together and stop being so lazy. So I don't really blame you for second guessing this relationship. She has obviously already insulted you about your parents as well as you as a person, and that to to me is a giant red flag on top of the other red flags that she has clearly exhibited. And personally, I would not take that lightly, and that would absolutely inform my decision-making process on whether or not I want to stay in this relationship if I was personally in your shoes. An entitled jerk keeps trying to hit my bike as I'm just trying to cycle to college, and after having dealt with this for several weeks, eventually this guy swerves into a cop car, totaling his car in the process, as well as getting arrested for reckless driving. And I've never been more satisfied to see karma work its magic. Here's what happened. So first, a little bit of backstory. I'm a college student and I cycle to campus every day. It's not a long ride at all, but I have to go through a zone where it's illegal to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk, so I'm forced to ride on the road itself. Most drivers don't really care and just go around me, since I stay to the edge and I don't make myself a nuisance. I also have one of those awful e-bikes that I commute on, and this will be important later. A few weeks ago, a guy in a Ford SUV started yelling at me as he drove by while I was in the road-only zone. All the usual things I get is just get off the road, or roads are for cars, you're going too slow, stuff like that. I get that from drivers on a weekly basis, and I just ignore them and I keep going. But this man was special though, since he cut right in front of me and slammed on his brakes after yelling at me all these weird and awful things. I was able to stop before I hit him, and when he floored it out of there, he yelled at me, "Better be careful next time, idiot." Now, I was pretty mad, but I did not get his license plate or anything like that, and I doubt anything could be done about it anyways. There was no real proof. Over lunch, I told one of my friends who works as an EMT the story, and he got seriously upset. Apparently, he has seen the results of a car suddenly brake checking a cyclist, and they are not pretty. 2 days later, the same Ford SUV jerk tried to brake check me again. I was expecting it as soon as I heard him yelling for me to get on the sidewalk. So once again, I avoided a crash. I told my EMT friend over lunch again, and he was even madder than before. I wanted to let it go, since I can't really do anything about it, and my bicycle isn't going to win in a crash. This guy keeps trying to brake check me every few days during my morning commute. Whenever we're on the same patch of road, it's the same guy doing this over and over again. About a week ago, my EMT friend told me that he told my story to one of his friends, and this friend belongs to the campus police, who was also equally upset. The two of them wanted to catch this jerk driver in the act. The plan was to have the policeman parked on the side of the road in hopes of catching and pulling over the jerk. I heartily agreed, and the officer pulled some strings and had himself posted on speeder catching duty for that stretch of road. A few days passed uneventfully, with no signs of that road-raging jerk. I saw the cop parked in the same spot on the side of the road every day, a spot where the road has a left turn lane and a straight lane ahead of it. Finally, I'm pedaling along and I can hear a familiar voice, and I knew right then and there that my revenge was going to take place. I heard this jerk say, "Get off the road, you idiot." I yelled back at him and said, "Catch me then," and I took off. I was spinning my scrawny little chicken legs as hard as they could go, and I then pegged the throttle. I guess this made the driver even angrier, because I heard his engine roar as he pursued me. He shifted into the left lane as I stayed in the right. I looked to the side and I saw a nasty old man in the driver's seat, with a passenger window open staring at me. His mouth was going like he was yelling, but I couldn't hear him over the wind noise. I saw the police car spot approaching and I started to slow down. Taking the opportunity, the driver swung right in front of me. I don't know if it was the speed or his anger that made him swing wide, but he cut across my lane and crashed straight into the back of the police car. I barely applied my brakes. I slowed down to maybe about 15 miles an hour, and I crashed into the side of his car. The officer got out of the car, and to say he was spitting mad would be an understatement. The officer then called an ambulance and another police car. Everyone was unhurt, since the jerk was only going about 25 miles an hour, but there was enough of an impact to trigger the SUV's airbags. The jerk ended up getting arrested for driving under the influence at 9 o'clock in the morning of all times, as well as for an illegal lane change, and probably some other stuff too. I don't know all the details, but I imagine that causing a crash like that would entail some additional charges that he is going to have to deal with for a long time. The guy also ended up having to pay for extensive repairs on the police cruiser and for a new e-bike to replace the one he destroyed by cutting in front of me and snapping the frame on my bike. On top of that, I hear that his car was defined as totaled by his insurance company since the airbags went off, so he also has to pay for a new car. With any luck, he'll lose his license for driving under the influence and will hopefully not be a menace to cyclists ever again. That guy the original original poster was dealing with is an absolute jerk. They were seriously trying to brake check this guy on the road, literally a busy road, just to try and get where they're going. Someone could have seriously gotten hurt because of that guy's negligence. That is not okay. So it's honestly really good to see that justice came their way and they finally got caught red-handed for the weird stuff they were doing, because brake checking a cyclist on the road is never the answer. And if anything, he could have easily just gone around him and gone on his day. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for refusing to help cook for over 20 people at an event after my wife canceled my catering order? Here's what happened. This weekend, my wife and I are hosting a retirement party for my mom, and we are expecting about 20 people. We are splitting the cost of food and beverages with my brother and his wife. During the planning process, I told everyone that I wanted to get the event catered so that no one would have to spend a bunch of time in the kitchen cooking for 20 people. Everyone agreed that this was a good idea, and I told them that I would take care of it. I placed the catering order last weekend. My wife and sister-in-law have been handling the logistics, and when I told them the cost of the catering, which was about $300, my sister-in-law made a comment about that being way too high. I told her it comes to about $15 per person, which is basically getting everyone fed for the price of a fast food combo meal, but with much better food. My sister-in-law said that we could save a lot of money if we just cooked ourselves instead. The reason cost is an issue for my sister-in-law is that they just welcomed their second child 2 months ago, and I guess they are feeling a bit pinched financially. I explained to the sister-in-law again my reasoning behind wanting it catered, because I don't want anyone to be burdened with cooking for a large group, and that I will gladly pay a bit more than our fair share if that makes her feel better. That seemed to eventually ease her mind. Unbeknownst to me though, my sister-in-law and my wife continued talking about it, and my sister-in-law had taken it upon herself to plan an entire meal that we would cook ourselves for half the price of the catering order. They did this also without discussing anything with me. They decided to cancel the catering order and just cook ourselves. My wife just told me this last night, and when my wife told me their plan, I asked them who would be doing the cooking, and she said me and her, because my sister-in-law and brother would probably be watching their kids. So I told her that since she and my sister-in-law made this decision on their own, I am not going to help with the cooking at all. I said I would gladly watch the kids while my wife and sister-in-law cook the entire meal for everybody else. She then told me that I am being a jerk and that I hate women if I think I can just refuse to help and make all these women do all the cooking. I told her that the two of them are the ones that went behind my back and canceled the catering order, so they should be the ones to figure out this new plan. And no, I'm not helping. She said that my sister-in-law was concerned about the cost and that my sister-in-law confessed that she was worried about money. I told her that's exactly why I offered to pay more, but apparently that wasn't enough, and that my sister-in-law and my wife just needed to be in control of this for some reason. She told me I need to be more understanding of my brother and sister-in-law's financial situation, and that cooking isn't that big of a deal, especially when we can all save some money. I told her that since it's not a big deal, the two of them should have no problem spending as much time as it takes to cook something for everybody, and I will entertain the rest of the guests. But once again, she told me that I'm being unreasonable for not helping. So honestly, I need some help here. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook after my wife canceled my catering order? No, you are not the jerk in this situation. Why on earth would they cancel that without talking to you first? All they needed to do was communicate what's going on. If the sister-in-law seriously was like, okay, I can't afford this. Even if you pay for more of this, I just can't justify the cost. Even that simple sentence would have at least had some kind of conversation going. And that could have led to maybe a compromise or something. But to make this choice behind the original poster's back, who was literally just looking out for everybody's best interests, and also who didn't want to cook in the first place, in my opinion, makes the wife and the sister-in-law complete jerks. And now, as icing on the cake, they're trying to make this guy cook for everybody else? Like, what are you talking about? He made his case very clear. He did not want to cook for all these people. It would be easier to have some kind of catering service of some kind, just to take that kind of stress off of everybody else's back. But no, the wife and the sister-in-law just wanted to make that happen. And not only that, they wanted to make this guy do it. And I honestly can't stand the fact that the wife is seriously making accusations that he just hates women and he wants all the women to do the cooking. Like, no, that is not what's going on here. If you're gonna make that kind of decision without consulting the person that made the order in the first place, then you can live with that decision and cook for everyone else yourself. Like, the sister-in-law is suddenly like, no, I can't can't pay for that, but have fun cooking. I'll be taking care of my kid. Like, that doesn't seem fair in the slightest. In my opinion, the plan you had to have this catering service of some kind would have been fine. It would have solved everybody's problems, and this really would have been an easy thing to organize. And the fact that you got upset because your wife and sister-in-law canceled this catering service behind your back without talking to you about it first at least does not make you the jerk, but rather makes them the jerk. My girlfriend thinks it's funny to try and mess with my diet and intentionally try to derail my health journey. And at this point, I'm seriously upset and I don't know what to do. I have been working on losing weight for about 2 months now, and I have made a huge stride. If I hit the goal for the day, I'd sometimes reward myself with something that I might be craving, like a mini piece of candy bar or a banana or something like that. My girlfriend, who didn't believe I was going to stick to the diet or even succeed in the slightest, was laughing at me when I first told her about it. As soon as I started, she would do things like bake cookies when I got home, or wait until I'm home to DoorDash something from a restaurant that she knows I really like, but it's one that I can't eat anything from because it doesn't fit with my diet. I was highly irritated by this. The last few weeks, she has been starting to do things like ask me for a bite of something I reward myself with, and then suddenly take a huge chunk out of it and toss back a tiny piece and say, "Sorry, I just gotta help you out." Or she would just straight up outright steal it. Yesterday, I decided to give myself a nice reward because I have been doing so well. So I bought myself a cookie from my favorite coffee shop. I got home, I set it down on the counter for later, and a few hours later when I went to get it, I found only one tiny piece of it remaining. And at this point, I was so seriously angry. I went to my girlfriend and I asked what in the world she was doing. She was laughing like crazy and said that I shouldn't have left it out just to tempt her with it. This was very upsetting to me. I tried to tell her I really don't think this is funny. She then went on to play dumb and try to joke around with me. This eventually led into a screaming match with her telling me I'm a grown man crying over a cookie and stormed away. I am still so furious over this. I don't understand why on earth she's doing this. I don't think it's funny or cute or anything like that. I feel so disrespected. Every time I try to bring this up, she would act like I'm being extremely unreasonable and childish. I feel like I have been wounded, and she is just picking at the scab just to try and get me worked up. This isn't like her at all. She has never been this way to me before, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Your girlfriend is a bully. Like, straight up, that's exactly what's happening here. She's mean, she's condescending, and she's making your life a living nightmare, even though you're trying to improve your weight and improve your health. And that is unbelievably toxic. And by the way, she's not just messing with your diet, she's messing with you. This is not an okay thing to do. And if anything, it's frankly immature. And you want to know why she's getting upset every time you bring this up? It's because she knows she's in the wrong. She knows that what she's doing is wrong and that she shouldn't be doing that. She's intentionally trying to sabotage your diet, all while trying to play this off as some kind of cute game. So in my opinion, I think you need to set a very clear boundary. You need to tell her exactly how you feel, maybe when there's a quiet moment when she isn't so upset about it, even though she has no right to be upset about it. She's the one causing problems. Then you can just explain to her, hey, this is really important to me and I'm trying to lose weight. Please stop treating me like garbage. Please stop bullying me, or something like that. And hopefully setting some clear boundaries will hopefully help her stop treating you like garbage, because your girlfriend is trying to undermine your health journey. And that, in my opinion, is incredibly unfair, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. My girlfriend does not care about my compliments anymore and seeks validation from other guys that she meets. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I moved to a new state across the country from my girlfriend a few months ago, and we started to have an open relationship. We tell each other everything, and today she told me that she loves my compliments, but she does not know if she can believe them because no other guy she meets and gets to know tells her the same thing or treats her how I treat her. She says she wants to believe the things I say, but she does not know if they are true, or if I'm just saying them to boost her ego and hype her up, or if I'm just saying it out of desperation of losing her because she knows I hate sleeping with other girls and I do not want to be with anyone else but her. She tries really hard to not even want anyone else either, and we tried to do an exclusive long-distance relationship, but for many reasons it didn't work out, mostly the physical, if you know what I mean. So we have been doing what I thought was a successful open relationship until today. She loves me and I love her too, but I do not know what I can do about the fact that she seeks validation from new guys that she meets, and that none of these guys see her in the way that I see her. It's ruining her self self-image of herself, and nothing I say can fix it. She means the world to me, and I do not care about her talking to other guys or spending quality time with them, if you know what I mean. What is bothering me is that she hates her life. She doesn't want people to tell her what to do, and she does not want to go to school, and she pretty much just hates everything besides spending quality time with people, and she cannot even do that because she cannot find anyone who treats her like I do. She wants me and no one else, and she cannot have me, and the guy she meets, she doesn't want to just hook up with randomly. She wants to know them, so she knows they will not do anything crazy to her, as the first guy she tried to randomly hook up with treated her extremely poorly and did things to her that she did not want, and now she just does not trust random hookups. The guys that she is meeting with, though, are not making her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world, even though she is just that. It makes her feel like I'm lying about how the world sees her as this beautiful person, and I have no idea what to even say or do. I am really worried about her, and I want to be able to do something, but her parents basically control her entire life, and she doesn't even have a job because her parents control her bank account, and they take all of her money anyways. She is just really upset with her life and knows that in a year it will change, and we can be together finally, but she is really having a difficult time staying positive, and she really just wants someone to treat her right. What should I do? This does not sound like a healthy relationship. First off, the two people that are being described in this story are very young. We're talking like they're barely adults. So the fact that this is the conversation that's happening about having an open relationship is honestly insane to me. I personally think that open relationships are just cheating with extra steps. It's just a way for the other person to sleep around and not feel any guilt. And that, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic, and it is not cohesive to a successful relationship. That's just my opinion though. Maybe you have a different one, feel free to let me know in the comments down below, but I think open relationships are incredibly dumb, and they almost always result in someone getting upset because the other party is spending quality time with people and the other person doesn't like it. Also, this woman that you're talking about, who is clearly like the most beautiful person on planet Earth, she is literally acting like this for attention. Like, this is all attention-seeking behavior. Like, there are red flags all over this story. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, we have a long-distance relationship, but instead this is some kind of pseudo-relationship that you guys have, where you basically compliment her and she doesn't believe you. Oh, and by the way, she's sleeping around with other guys. Personally, I think both people in this story are incredibly immature, and they both have a lot of growing up to do if they ever want to have a successful relationship in the future. Because in my opinion, this one absolutely does not seem healthy. Am I the jerk for silencing my girlfriend after she made some very inappropriate remarks about a friend who just survived cancer? Here's what happened. So I've been dating my girlfriend by the name of Jane for about 2 months now. Jane is not her real name. We met on a blind date that our friend set up on us and have been seeing each other relatively regularly since then. I'm not entirely sure if we are officially boyfriend and girlfriend, but Jane seems to think so. Jane describes herself as a bit of a mean girl. I honestly thought she was joking for a while, as she is typically quite nice. However, she has an awful tendency to insult people based primarily on their appearances. These insults can happen anywhere and anytime, and can be targeted at literally anyone. Of course, she never says those things about the person right in front of them. The other day, I invited Jane to a family friends event that we were having. My mother's friend Jennifer, that's also not her real name, had just gotten out of the hospital for cancer. Jennifer's family and my family are very close. I've known them since I was born, and I consider them to be extended family. Due to cancer and chemotherapy, Jennifer no longer has hair and is very thin. But once Jane saw her, she started smirking. I literally pleaded with her not to say anything rude, and she agreed, but told me that I was ruining her fun. Fast forward, and I'm chatting with my mother and my sister. Jane walks by and says hello. She chats for a bit before starting to make severely highly offensive jokes about Jennifer and her appearance. I will not repeat any of them, but her jokes mainly pertain to baldness and anorexia. My mother and sister looked mortified, and so was I. I literally had my jaw hanging open for a good few seconds. Once I snapped out of it, I firmly told Jane to stop, and that no one found her awful sense of humor funny except for herself. She then got upset and said that I was being controlling and misogynistic for trying to silence her. I maintained my position and reaffirmed that her comments were insane. She got even more upset and asked that we leave. I said it would be rude for me to go, as it was still relatively early, and she ended up leaving on her own. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk for silencing my girlfriend after she she made some incredibly offensive jokes about my cancer-ridden friend. Dude, your girlfriend is not a mean girl. She is just an awful person. Who in their right mind would bully a cancer survivor? Like, seriously, that is not a good person. Like, she had to know what this event was for, right? Like, she knew she was going to an event where they were basically saying, hey, we're glad you're alive, Jennifer. And honestly, making comments about people's physical appearances is honestly so rude. Like, even in private. And it seems like she goes out of her way to try and nitpick and say things about people just to try and put them down. Like, that's not a mean girl like you would see from like a movie or something like that. That's a straight up horrible person who will get nowhere in life. It's also really indicative that she's showing these kind of traits 2 months into the relationship. Like, that's not very long and you're already seeing this crazy red flag. And it's also funny that the second she is put in her place, which is exactly what happened, she tries to claim that you're being controlling and misogynistic. And that is insane to me. That is not what happened. What happened is you made fun of a cancer survivor and you seriously thought that everybody else would go along with it and be like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy or something? So if anything to the original poster, I would say beware of this person. They do not seem like a good person, and this might be just the tip of the iceberg. And seriously, you can do a lot better than an adult claiming that they're some kind of mean girl, when in reality, they are honestly just a horrible person. An entitled hall monitor constantly bullies me and everybody I know at the boarding school I attend. So me and my classmates decide to get revenge. So as he was gone for nearly 6 weeks, slowly but surely, my classmates and I encased his car in a block of ice. Here's what happened. So for various reasons, I went to a boarding school in Pennsylvania from sophomore through senior year of high school. It wasn't anything due to like criminal activity or something like that, but because of mental health issues and learning disabilities that the regular school was not equipped to handle at the time, I decided to go to this school. Now, one of the dorm monitor guys was a royal jerk. Any day he was on duty was an absolute nightmare. He would stick you with on campus only, aka meaning that you're grounded for just the littlest things possible, and complaining about it got you in sight until bedtime, which basically means you have to be visible. You can't hide in your room even to do your homework. Typically though, it's just the I'm in charge type of bullying that you might expect. One year, he got bad news right after we got back from Thanksgiving. A family member on the other side of the country was in bad shape, so he had to go take care of them. We never got the exact details, but he lived in a terrible neighborhood and didn't trust his car to be in one piece when he got back. So he asked the school administrators if he could leave his car at the school while he was away for about 6 weeks. They let him do that, but the only stipulation was that he would have to leave his keys with the maintenance office so they could move the car if the parking area needed plowing. He parked his car on the grass around the side of our dorm the second week of December and then just left, and he didn't get back until the end of January. Because the dorm was full of teenagers, their spigots didn't have regular handles on them. Instead, they used a strange square key that was kept in the office that was only used with permission from the dorm monitors. However, a pair of flathead pliers worked really well to turn on the water. We hid a hose in the bedroom closet to the car, which was also right next to the spigot. The kid who was supposed to be in that room slept elsewhere, so he wouldn't get woken up by someone coming in every 20 to 30 minutes, unrolling the hose, hooking it up, and turning on the water, just to give the car a good misting, only to then roll the hose up again. So every day, from the minute we got back from classes to the minute we had to leave the next morning, that car got misted with water. We even got help from a couple of kids in our classes who lived close enough to bike over during Christmas vacation. One of them even showed up with a lawn chair and a book so he could just stay there and mist it again as soon as the last layer froze over. By the way, no staff were in any of the school buildings during vacation, so there was no chance we would ever get caught. In the middle of the night, 2 days after we got back from Christmas vacation, I was one of the 2 people on duty with the hose when the monitor for that night comes out for a smoke break. Now, we didn't know that he smoked, so we thought he was in the office, which was on the other end of the building. He sees me with the pliers in hand, and I think to myself, this is it. I'm in some deep trouble. But then he says something that I seriously didn't expect. He looks at me and says, "Did you forget something?" and holds out the spigot key. That's when we realized just how much that jerk was disliked. That monitor actually offered to help ice this guy's car during the day while we were in classes. By the time the jerk got back, the car was encased in a block of ice. I mean, it had to be at least 3 inches thick. When he complained to the administrators, they told him that because he hadn't dropped his keys off, everyone had assumed that he changed his mind about leaving the car there. When he went to get his car out of the ice, he couldn't just attack it with a hammer. Doing so would break every window and destroy the paint job. The only way to get rid of the ice was to do it the same way it went on, slowly and painfully. He tried using a small blowtorch, but that didn't work because he got too impatient and tried to put the torch right against the ice, which of course kept putting it out. He then got the smart idea of hooking a hose to the dorm's hot water heater. It was installed at first because all the hoses on campus miraculously disappeared. Because honestly, who would need a hose in Pennsylvania in the middle of January? Then he was told he could only do it while we were at class because we needed the hot water for showers in the morning and evening. Plus we needed it for the dishwasher. Now that didn't work too well because he had a regular job he had to be at from Monday through Friday 9 to 5. And weekends were out because we had to do our laundry. He ended up running back and forth with a couple of tea kettles, melting channels of ice so he could chisel out the ice between them, but we kept turning the burner off when he left the kitchen. Eventually, he stopped working for the school at the end of June, and I've never been more satisfied by getting revenge on somebody in my life. First off, that is really funny. I think overall, it really is a harmless prank for the most part, but from the sounds of it, this guy was insufferable. He would constantly act like he was better than everybody else. He really loved being in charge, and it sounded like he was being just an all-around jerk, and the power he had was clearly going to his head. And as someone who used to live in Pennsylvania, let me tell you, it definitely gets cold in January. So misting his car as a prank to completely encase his car in ice is not unreasonable. Like, that absolutely is possible. So good for you for getting back at this obnoxious guy. He was clearly just a bully who had just way too much power. And sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. An entitled Karen keeps bothering my family and anonymously reporting my family to the HOA because we apparently have too many cars and we take up too many parking spots. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm a male in college. I go to a nearby community college, so I still live with my parents and my sister who is in high school. We all have our driver's license, but we only have 3 cars due to limited parking spaces in our small neighborhood, only having our garage, which allows 1 car, 2 spots in our driveway, and the overflow parking for guests. We are allowed to use the overflow parking as long as we move our car every so often and don't hog the spot to ourselves. My sister and I are only able to drive one of the 3 cars because one is stick shift and only my dad can drive it, while the other is too big, and thus we struggle with parking and safety bubbles. Sometimes my dad likes to take the stick car out of the garage, and when he does, he either puts it in the overflow parking or he moves one of the other cars to the overflow and puts the stick shift car in the driveway. Anyways, we have this neighbor who, for the sake of this story, I will call Karen for obvious reasons, who works from home as a multitude of different things. Seriously, she runs like 6 or 7 cell-phone companies, and they all operate from her house. She's big into fitness, and one of her businesses is being a personal trainer. So imagine a Karen who is in shape and has a ponytail. She has a dog who was friends with our dog, and she was pretty nice for a while. However, she started getting annoyed with how neighbors park their cars, and even started taking pictures of license plates and calling the cops on parked cars that she deemed as illegally parked. She was also quite oblivious to how she treated others. One time before we had a falling out with her, I was walking the dog and Karen was out with her dog. Naturally, since my dog and her dog are friends, they wanted to play. The leashes got tangled, and while I was trying to untangle them, she just stood there and watched. Eventually, my hand slipped and my little finger got cut open by her leash. She uses one of those retractable leashes, and they are more like a wire than the fabric one that I was using. I got the leashes untied and then looked at the cut, and trust me, it was not looking good. I said to her, I gotta get going. I got cut by the leashes and I need to clean the wound. She then responded by saying, but the dogs only just started playing. Let them play longer. I'm sure your cut isn't that bad. I gave her a look and I said to her, I don't know, it looks pretty bad and it kinda hurts. I then showed her the cut and it definitely did not look any better. She then said, oh, you're fine. Besides, this leash has never cut me before, so I'm sure it wasn't the leash that cut you. And after that, I just said, I need to get home quickly anyways. We have some family coming over soon. And then I just walked away. So that's the kind of person that this Karen is. So anyways, once I got my license, we started needing more cars, and thus we sometimes needed to use the overflow parking for extended periods of time. Karen started texting my mom saying stuff like, maybe your son should go to a college where he has to live on campus, and maybe your husband should sell one of those cars. Naturally, my mom got annoyed by this after a while while and just straight up blocked the Karen. After my mom told me about this, I was confused. Why did she have a problem with our parking when she isn't even a part of the HOA or anything like that? My mom then told me something that made me realize just how self-centered this Karen really is. Apparently, this Karen makes her parents use the overflow parking, and when she gets her dog groomed, she doesn't take her dog to a groomer like a normal person that lives in a small neighborhood. Instead, she has this massive truck with a huge trailer show up. They park in the neighborhood, practically in the middle of the street, and then has her dog get in the trailer, where it then gets groomed. And she has the audacity to complain about our parking, like seriously? Anyways, after my mom blocked her, she started weirdly stalking my mom whenever she walked the dog. It got to the point where my mom didn't want to walk the dog anymore, and when she did, she avoided the Karen's house like the plague. But one time my mom couldn't avoid the Karen. They were walking towards each other, and like I said, it's a small neighborhood, so my mom had no other path to really take. The Karen then started calling our dog's name, which our dog was excited and started running towards the Karen. So now my mom had to talk to this Karen. The Karen then started talking about how it was rude of her to block her, asking why my mom would do that, all the while still complaining about the cars in the overflow. She then said, "You know that's for guests only, right?" Which again, anyone can use the overflow parking as long as they don't use it 24/7. As the Karen goes on, my mom gets so annoyed that she starts to yell at this Karen. She says to her, "Stay out of our business, you absolute moron. We have 4 drivers in our house, and sometimes we need to use the overflow. Now leave us alone." Apparently, the Karen's son was also nearby playing in Karen's driveway, and when my mom was telling me all of this, she said she didn't even care that the Karen's son was there. She was just so fed up with this Karen bossing us around. In fact, while my mom was telling me this, she said that Karen had been telling my mom how to properly raise me and my sister. I had no idea that she had been doing that since my mom kept that to herself. So not only had this Karen ignored the fact that I was injured by her leash, and not only had she been trying to micromanage how my family and I park our cars, and she's been stalking my mom after getting blocked, but she also tried to boss my mom around and tell her how she should raise her kids, despite the fact that the Karen's kid is kind of a brat. The next day, I took the dog for a walk, and the Karen stopped me. She said to me, "Your mother was very rude to me yesterday. What is her deal?" I simply said to her, "She is sick of you trying to boss her around." And then I just straight up walked away. As I walked back to our house with my dog, I could hear this Karen shouting, "Hey, come back here right now. That is not a good answer. You're just as bad as your mother." I just went in my house, and now no one in my family has talked to her ever since. This all happened last summer in 2022, and we still don't talk to the Karen, and thankfully she doesn't talk to us either. However, she still anonymously reports us for illegally parking in the overflow. Thankfully, we have a friend in the HOA that knows this Karen is crazy and that we don't park illegally, so nothing comes of the Karen's reports. But what do you think? Are my family and I the jerks here? What should we do? Your family literally has done nothing wrong. This Karen has some weird obsession with you and your family, and she clearly has nothing to do with her life. And that is not your problem in the slightest. This lady sounds like a weirdo, and there's not much you can do about it. So honestly, ignoring her and just moving on with your life is really probably the best thing you can do, because this lady seems crazy, and it seems like at the drop of a hat, she would love to try and cause problems, probably no matter who the person is. Am I the jerk for denying my sister to get married on my property after she failed to tell me when this was being done, and now that date is absolutely being used by another family? Here's what happened. So I am 25 years old and my sister is 29. I also have a younger sister who's 8 years old. When I was 14, my mom sent me to live with her parents. Her excuse was that they needed me to help out, but I believe she just didn't want to deal with a growing male teen. My grandparents owned an amazing property in the mountains that had an amazing view. We also have some horses and other critters. They were also quite wealthy as well. They both passed 4 years ago, a month apart. They gave me the property because I would appreciate it and respect it way more than anyone else. And while I got the property, my mom and sisters got the money and other assets that were overall valued more than the property. In the past 4 years, I turned part of the property into a venue that is used for mainly weddings. My grandparents also knew of this idea and thought it was a good one. We are busy and usually booked around 8 months out. My sister got engaged 1.5 years ago and says she wanted to get married at the property. I said yes, and I told her to just let me know the date as soon as possible so I can make sure that it is properly booked. Well, as you can probably guess, I never got a date. I followed up several times and I kept asking her, and she would literally just brush me off. 2 weeks ago, I got the wedding invitation stating the property is the location and the date, which is in September of this year. I immediately called her back to say that we're booked out for that date and we cannot accommodate her. Well, now my sister, my mom, other family, her partner's family, as well as other flying monkeys have been blowing up on me. They are also calling and writing reviews for my business. I asked them to stop, and I called my sister telling her that I literally only needed to know what the date of her wedding would be so that I could block it out to make sure that no one else was going to take it. And she couldn't even do that. She went off on how I'm ruining her day. It is our family's property after all. How she already sent out the invitations and couldn't go back now. She said that I should just tell the other couple to cancel, even though they've been on the books for well over a year now, and I actually like them. She says to me, family is way more important. After this last big blow up, I started communicating strictly through the business, and I used our recorded line as well as email. I suggested 3 other dates around the same time, but apparently that's not good enough. She kept saying, you're being resentful and you're a jerk. So this begs the question, am I the jerk for not letting my sister use the family property, which is mine by the way, for her upcoming wedding that she didn't tell me about in advance? No, you are not the jerk. Your sister is a complete idiot. She should have told you ahead of time like you asked her to do. Instead, she now just sprung it on you as if you're not already knee-deep in trying to get stuff figured out. Like you literally run a business. This isn't something you're just doing casually. This is a business on your property. And the least she could do is try and be accommodating for what you're trying to do. Like legitimately, she seems very selfish and very self-centered. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. You are literally just trying to do your job and honor the property that your grandparents gave you. And by the way, I'm right there with you. It is not the family property. It is strictly and specifically yours. And if your selfish sister wanted to use it, well, then she probably should have blocked it out properly and gave you some kind of advance notice. Because as of right now, that date is completely blocked out and she has nobody to blame but herself. My job is horrible. And as a result of terrible management and horrible hiring practices, I decided to quit and find a new job. But as I left, I decided to get some revenge. And as a result, my company lost internet for nearly 3 days. And I'm honestly so happy I was able to get them back. Here's what happened. At my last job, my main duty was the IT manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for 3.5 years at that point, and as I was trusted by everyone, if I had something important to say, people really did listen. During COVID, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hires a young narcissist as his second in charge. And this guy's one of those where they're always going to tell the truth, even though you won't like it type of person. Super annoying person overall. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second. In the first 3 months, this bonehead upsets everyone, all the way up to the point where 15 people from various positions leave the company to find another job. This is during the pandemic too, by the way, where a lot of people were even thankful just to have a job. But 15 people were willing to risk finding another job in the middle of a pandemic than try and stick around. He was seriously that bad. As Bonehead started to upset our customer base, and as our sales started to suffer as a result, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point, so longtime vendors were replaced with friends and family of this bonehead. Services were downgraded or cut, pay plans for sales departments were jacked with, which further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day, the bonehead comes in and tells me to stop doing safety checks as well as maintenance repairs on our products so that sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected and went to the owner, as the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money, but he threw his support behind the bonehead's idea. A few months of this goes by, and after he fired one of my employees on my birthday because he refused to give this bonehead access to the server room, which is restricted to me, the owner, and my employee, by the way, I knew that right then and there it was time to go. I find a new job, put in my 2 weeks notice, and of course this bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday, which was the day after I put my 2 weeks notice in. So I decided it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks, and I informed them that I'm out of here, while filing with the state over my wages being withheld. As I'm walking out the door, this bonehead reminds me that I am no longer an employee of this company and to not get involved in the company affairs and possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. Fast forward to this Monday and I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me that my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and they will cut it off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and I see that my account is paid. So after going back and forth, I find out I am still the point of contact from my last job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them that I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact because if they cannot get one, they will be forced to suspend their service. I repeated that I'm not allowed by threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs, and I just left it at that. An hour later, a buddy that I know who still works there called me up and told me they had to stop working as their internet service was shut off. But I played stupid, and you know what? It took them 3 days just to try and restore it. Good for the original poster. I really hate it when people act like that, where they not only tank the company, but then start trying to boss people around and act like they're bigger and better than everybody else at the company. I mean, this guy that was the bonehead of the company, he had to know that people were leaving because of him, right? Like literally 15 people left in the middle of the pandemic. If that's not a clue into the fact that he is doing an awful job and that people really don't like him, then honestly, I don't know what is. And you know what? The owner is also to blame in this situation. They let their company go right out from underneath them. They just kind of gave up and didn't really care about what happened anymore. And that in and of itself is really sad. You would think that someone would want to be involved and have some kind of say in their company instead of having some idiot try and take over and basically tank it into the ground. So good for the original poster for not only finding a new job, but also saying, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this, because no one should be forced to work in that kind of circumstance. It simply doesn't sound fun, and I would hate to have to deal with that on a daily basis. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.